Love to know where this story is finding you. Now take a breath, relax, and let the story begin. Welcome to Cora Stories Live. Tonight, settle in, get comfortable, and make yourself at home. Whether you are listening from morning light, late evening, or somewhere deep in the quiet hours of night, I am grateful you are here. In the comments, tell us where you are listening from tonight. City, state, or country. I would love to know where this story is finding you. Now take a breath, relax, and let the story begin. Welcome to Cora Stories Live. Tonight, settle in, get comfortable, and make yourself at home. Whether you are listening from morning light, late evening, or somewhere deep in the quiet hours of night, I am grateful you are here. In the comments, tell us where you are listening from tonight. City, state, or country. I would love to know where this story is finding you. Now take a breath, relax, and let the story begin. Welcome to Cora Stories Live. Tonight, settle in, get comfortable, and make yourself at home. Whether you are listening from morning light, late evening, or somewhere deep in the quiet hours of night, I am grateful you are here. In the comments, tell us where you are listening from tonight. City, state, or country. I would love to know where this story is finding you. Now take a breath, relax, and let the story begin. Welcome to Cora Stories Live. Tonight, settle in, get comfortable, and make yourself at home. Whether you are listening from morning light, late evening, or somewhere deep in the quiet hours of night, I am grateful you are here. In the comments, tell us where you are listening from tonight. City, state, or country. I would love to know where this story is finding you. Now take a breath, relax, and let the story begin. Welcome to Cora Stories Live. Tonight, settle in, get comfortable, and make yourself at home. Whether you are listening from morning light, late evening, or somewhere deep in the quiet hours of night, I am grateful you are here. In the comments, tell us where you are listening from tonight. City, state, or country. I would love to know where this story is finding you. Now take a breath.
I used to think monsters looked like monsters. That is what childhood teaches you. Sharp teeth, cruel eyes, a face dark enough that even innocence knows to run. But life teaches something stories rarely do. Sometimes monsters are handsome. Sometimes they are charming. Sometimes they shake your hand firmly, smile for family photographs, remember birthdays, tip generously at restaurants, and ask your children about school with warm, fatherly eyes. Sometimes the people the world calls good men go home and become storms nobody else ever sees. My father was that kind of storm, the kind that wore sunshine in public and thunder in private, the kind neighbors admired, the kind women trusted, the kind men respected, the kind children wanted to be like, and the kind my mother spent years quietly surviving. I know because I was there. I watched him love her in ways that looked beautiful. I watched him break her in ways nobody could see, and I watched the day he finally made one mistake he could never undo. He touched what she loved more than she feared him. Me. That was the day my mother stopped surviving him and quietly began ending him. Fear can make people small. Pain can make people silent. But love, real love, can turn the gentlest soul into something fierce enough to walk through fire barefoot if it means their child reaches safety on the other side. Before I begin, tell me in the comments where you are listening from and what time this story has found you. Is it morning? With coffee still warm beside you? The middle of a long afternoon or late at night when quiet stories seem to keep us company while the rest of the world sleeps? I read every comment, every single one, and I am grateful you are here. Now let me tell you about my mother. Her name was Elena, and if warmth could become a person, it would have chosen her face. My earliest memories of my mother are soft ones. Her hands dusted with flour, the faint smell of cinnamon and lavender soap clinging to her skin. The quiet hum of old songs while she cooked. The way she tucked blankets around me like she was sealing me inside love itself. When she kissed my forehead, she always lingered a second longer than most mothers do, as if she wanted that kiss to stay with me after she walked away. Maybe she knew I would need those extra seconds. Maybe she knew childhood in our house was going to ask me to grow up too quickly. Maybe mothers simply know things heaven whispers only to them. My name is Luca. I am 38 years old now. A husband, a father, a man whose children laugh loudly in my home without fear of becoming a problem. Doors in my house close gently, voices stay kind. Silence feels peaceful, not dangerous. No one walks on eggshells, no one flinches at footsteps, no child listens through walls trying to predict what version of love is coming through the front door. That peace did not happen by accident. It was built by a woman who bled for it. My mother built it, brick by brick, prayer by prayer, scar by scar. When I was little, our house had rules. Not rules written down, not rules spoken aloud, survival rules. Do not leave toys where Dad can see them. Do not laugh too loudly in the evening. Do not interrupt when he is speaking. Do not ask for things when he looks tired. Do not spill drinks. Do not make mistakes. Do not make noise. Do not make him angry. Children should not know how to read tension. But I did. I knew the sound of my father's car pulling into the driveway and how the entire house changed when it did. I knew the way my mother's shoulders tightened when keys turned in the lock. I knew how quickly joy could leave a room. I knew how silence could become heavy enough to feel like weather pressing against your chest. I knew fear long before I knew what fear was called. But what I remember most, what stays with me even now, is how hard my mother fought to make sure fear never became the whole story. Every morning before my father woke, she created little pockets of peace. She made pancakes shaped like animals. She let me stir batter while standing on a little wooden stool by the stove. She kissed flour onto the tip of my nose and laughed when I sneezed. She called ugly pancakes beautiful mistakes. Once, when I flipped one badly, and it folded into itself like a crumpled blanket, I frowned and told her it looked ruined. She smiled and brushed hair from my forehead. "Nothing made with love is ruined," she said softly. "Sometimes imperfect things feed people best." I did not know then that she was talking about more than pancakes. That was my mother. She hid truth inside tenderness, wrapped wisdom in ordinary moments, fed courage to people in small daily servings. And then there was Marco. My father. If charm were currency, he would have been rich beyond imagination. At neighborhood cookouts, he was the center of gravity. He stood over grills laughing loudly, handing out burgers, teasing husbands, complimenting wives, tossing footballs with children in the yard. He remembered everyone's names. He helped older neighbors carry groceries. He donated to church fundraisers. He held doors open. He called strangers friend. People adored him. I still remember Mrs. Donnelly from next door leaning over our fence one summer afternoon smiling at my mother. "Elena," she said, "you truly married one of the good ones." My mother smiled politely, a practiced smile, a careful smile the kind women wear when truth would make everyone uncomfortable. Then Mrs. Donnelly left, and my mother's smile disappeared, like light switching off in an empty room. That was when I first started understanding something was wrong. Not loudly, quietly. The cruelest truths usually arrive that way. Slowly, like dusk swallowing daylight, 1 inch at a time. There is something dangerous about beautiful masks. People trust what shines. They trust confidence. They trust laughter. They trust a man who remembers birthdays, kisses babies on the forehead at church, and carries himself like kindness lives in his bones. That is how darkness survives in plain sight. Not by looking evil, but by looking admirable. My father understood that better than anyone I have ever known. Marco did not become cruel when he was angry. Cruelty was not his temper. Cruelty was his craft. He practiced it the way gifted men practice piano. Patiently, precisely, quietly. He knew exactly how much warmth to give in public, how much coldness to deliver in private, how far to push before pulling back just enough to keep hope alive. That was his genius. He never tried to destroy my mother all at once. He dismantled her carefully, one apology at a time, one criticism at a time, one accusation at a time, one small humiliation at a time. Like water hollowing stone, slow enough that even the stone begins believing. It was always meant to disappear. I remember the first time I understood fear had a voice. I was 6. It was raining outside, the kind of slow gray rain that makes a house feel smaller. My mother was in the kitchen, humming softly while stirring soup. I was on the floor building a city out of blocks. Marco walked in smiling. He hung his coat neatly, kissed my mother on the cheek, ran his hand affectionately over my hair. Everything looked normal, beautiful even. Then he lifted the spoon from the pot and tasted the soup. He paused. Just for a second. That second changed the room. Too much salt. 3 harmless words. That was all. But I watched my mother's body tighten immediately. Not dramatically, instinctively. Like someone bracing for impact they already knew was coming. It is a little salty, he said gently. My mother moved toward the stove at once. I can fix it. He smiled. No, he said softly. You cannot. Quiet, calm, controlled. That was always worse. He set the spoon down with deliberate care, then leaned against the counter and folded his arms. You rush, he said. My mother lowered her eyes. I am sorry. You do not pay attention. I said I am sorry. You are always sorry after. His voice never rose. That was what made it terrifying. Shouting is chaotic. Whispered cruelty is intimate. It crawls inside you deeper. My mother reached for the pot again, but he gently caught her wrist. Not hard. Almost tenderly. If someone had walked in at that moment, they would have thought it looked affectionate. It was not. It was ownership disguised as closeness. He leaned near her face and spoke softly enough that only she should have heard. But children in broken homes become experts at hearing what is meant to be hidden. I work hard, he said. I deserve care when I come home. Why is that always too much to ask of you? Her voice came out small. It is not too much. Then why do I keep feeling disappointed? That sentence stayed with me for years. Not because of what he said, because of what it did. It made her responsible for his emptiness. That was Marco's greatest weapon. He handed people guilt for wounds. He created himself. And guilt is a cruel chain, especially for loving women. Loving women will break themselves trying to fix pain they never caused. They will carry blame that does not belong to them. They will call endurance loyalty. They will call self-erasure peacekeeping. They will call surviving love, until one day they wake up and realize love should never require disappearing. My mother had not reached that awakening yet, but she was getting closer. I could feel it. Children always feel the tremors before walls collapse. That night, after dinner, Marco sat in his favorite chair in the living room, reading the newspaper, while my mother quietly cleaned the kitchen. I sat nearby, drawing superheroes with crayons. I was coloring a cape bright red when Marco suddenly spoke without lowering the paper. Who called today? My mother froze for the briefest second. No one else would have noticed. I noticed everything. No one important, she said. He lowered the newspaper slowly. His smile was gone. No one important has a name. She dried her hands on a towel. It was Rosa from down the street. What did she want? She was checking on me. Silence. A dangerous silence. Then he laughed softly, but there was no joy in it. Checking on you! He folded the newspaper neatly and stood. Why would another woman feel the need to check on my wife? She was being kind. His eyes narrowed. Or were you talking? My mother's voice stayed calm. Talking about what? His jaw tightened. Our business. There it was, that phrase. Our business. Abusive people love darkness. They rename secrecy dignity. They call silence respect. They rename control protection. But darkness has one weakness. Truth only needs one crack of light. My mother met his eyes. Not defiantly, not fearfully, steadily. I was talking about gardening, she said. Tomatoes, if you must know. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then Marco smiled again, that smile. The one that never reached his eyes. He walked toward her slowly, gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and kissed her forehead. It looked loving. What he whispered next was poison. Be careful who you trust, he murmured. People love destroying happy homes. Then he walked away. My mother stood perfectly still for several seconds. Then she quietly went back to washing dishes. But I saw tears slipping silently down her face. That was the night I climbed onto a chair, wrapped my little arms around her waist from behind, and whispered the biggest promise a small boy could make. When I grow up, I told her, I will protect you. She turned, knelt down to my level, and took my face gently in both hands. Her eyes were wet, but she smiled through it. Oh, my brave boy, she whispered. Your job is not to save me. Then what is my job? She kissed my forehead. To stay soft in a hard world that is harder than becoming hard yourself. I did not understand then. I understand now. Pain tries to recruit you. It begs you to become what wounded you. Cruelty wants children of cruelty. Bitterness wants heirs. Broken men often create broken men because pain feels justified repeating itself. But mothers like Elena fight a different battle. They fight to keep darkness from reproducing itself through the people they love. That was her war. Not just surviving Marco, stopping Marco from living on inside me. And quietly, without my father knowing, she had already begun preparing her escape. It started with spare change hidden, where no man thinks to look. Inside a flour tin wrapped in wax paper, folded hope, dollar by dollar, secret by secret. Brick by brick. And somewhere in the house, a black notebook was beginning to fill with truths Marco prayed would never be written down. People often ask why women stay. That question is usually asked by people standing safely outside a fire, wondering why someone inside does not simply walk out. But fear builds complicated walls. Some are financial, some are emotional, some are even spiritual. Some are built from shame, others are built from exhaustion, and some are built from love. That last one confuses people most, because loving women often stay not because they are weak, but because they are trying to protect everyone inside the burning house. They become smoke eaters, breathing poison so their children might breathe a little less of it. My mother stayed for years because she believed she was standing between the storm and me. And for a long time, she was right. Marco's cruelty toward me was mostly shadow, sharp words, cold silences. Humiliations disguised as discipline, little cuts that do not bleed where anyone can see them. He corrected how I sat, how I spoke, how long I took to answer questions, how loudly I laughed, how I held utensils, how I looked people in the eye. Nothing was ever directly cruel enough to explain, but together, it became a cage around boyhood. Childhood should be noisy, messy, curious. Children should ask too many questions, run too fast, laugh too loudly, make ridiculous mistakes. That is how life introduces itself. But fear makes children old before their time. I became careful, measured, watchful. I learned to scan rooms before entering them. I learned to listen for tone beneath words. I learned to apologize quickly, even when I had done nothing wrong. I learned how to disappear in plain sight. That is not maturity. That is survival wearing a child's face. Still, my mother kept building small islands of peace for me. That was her miracle. She could be drowning. and somehow still lift me above water. One Saturday afternoon, while Marco was golfing with friends, my mother did something unusual. She opened every curtain in the house. Sunlight rushed in everywhere. She turned music on, not softly, loud enough to dance to. Then she grabbed my hands. "Come here," she said, smiling. I laughed. Why? Because joy should not always whisper. And she danced with me in the living room, spinning, laughing, bare feet on wooden floors, hair loose around her shoulders. For those few minutes, I saw who Elena had been before fear. She was radiant, alive. Light itself. Then there was a knock at the door. My mother froze. The old reflex. Music stopped, smile vanished. But when she opened the door, it was Rosa, holding a pie dish covered in foil. "Well," Rosa said, raising one eyebrow, "I leave for 20 minutes, and you start a party without me." My mother laughed nervously. Rosa stepped inside, looked around, and took everything in. Open curtains, music still humming low, my mother's flushed face, my bright smile. Something passed through Rosa's eyes, sadness mixed with relief. She had seen enough dark houses in her lifetime to recognize a rare thing, a woman fighting to remember herself. She handed over the pie. "Peach cobbler," she said, "and before you protest, yes, I used too much butter. And no, I do not regret it," I grinned. "Can I have some?" "You may have scandalous amounts." My mother laughed again, real laughter. Rosa listened to it carefully. Then she said something that seemed ordinary at the time, but years later I understood it was not. "If you ever need a place to breathe," Rosa said quietly, "my door does not lock for friends." Silence settled. My mother looked at her, really looked at her, and in that moment, two women had an entire conversation without speaking plainly. "I see you. You are not fooling me. You are not alone. When you are ready, there is somewhere to run." My mother swallowed hard, then simply nodded. "Thank you." Small words. After Rosa left, my mother stood at the sink washing dishes, staring out the window. I sat at the kitchen table eating peach cobbler far too quickly. Without turning, she asked softly, "Luca, are you happy?" The question surprised me, I thought carefully. Children answer truth more honestly than adults. "Sometimes," I said. She turned. Her face changed. Pain moved across it like shadow. "Sometimes?" I shrugged. "When Dad is gone?" "Mostly yes." Silence. Then I added quietly, "When he comes home, my stomach hurts." My mother gripped the edge of the sink. Hard, her knuckles turned white. She was very still, too still. "And then," she cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, the kind of crying that looks like something sacred breaking. She crossed the room quickly, dropped to her knees, and pulled me tightly into her arms, so tightly I could feel her heart pounding wildly against my chest. "Oh God," she whispered into my hair. Her voice broke. "Oh God, I am so sorry." I did not understand why she was apologizing, but now I do. Mothers blame themselves for storms they did not create. They carry impossible guilt. They replay every warning sign they ignored, every moment they stayed, every wound their children absorbed while they were trying to hold life together. That is the cruel mathematics of abuse. The victim somehow becomes the one apologizing. My mother held me for a long time that day. Then she pulled back and looked me straight in the eyes, and what I saw there was new. Not fear, not sadness, decision. Quiet, cold, absolute. Like iron cooling into shape, she touched my cheek gently and whispered, "No more." At 7 years old, I thought she meant my stomach aches, or my sadness, or the yelling. I did not understand she had just made a private vow. A vow powerful enough to change every life tied to hers. No more shrinking, no more explaining away cruelty. No more protecting Marco's image. No more sacrificing herself on the altar of keeping peace. No more. But cruel men feel distance the way wolves smell blood in the air. And Marco was beginning to sense something changing in Elena that made him dangerous, more watchful, more suspicious, more possessive. And then, life delivered news that should have been joy. My mother was pregnant with Sophia, the child who would become both blessing and spark to gasoline. Because when Marco heard the news, he smiled. He kissed my mother. He held her face tenderly. He told her this was wonderful. Then later that night, through the wall, I heard him become someone else. And what he said next changed everything. That was where the mask cracked wider. Not in public. Not where applause lived. Not where neighbors waved and called him a good man. No. Darkness prefers private rooms. Closed doors, low voices. Places where truth has no witnesses. That night, rain tapped softly against the bedroom window. The house was dim, except for warm yellow light spilling from beneath my parents' door. I was supposed to be asleep, but children raised in fear do not sleep deeply. We rest lightly. One ear always listening, one part of us always standing guard. I heard my father's voice first, soft, measured, too calm, that dangerous calm. You should have told me sooner. My mother's voice came next, quiet but hopeful. I only found out this morning. I wanted to surprise you. Silence. Then Marco laughed once. A short laugh with no warmth in it. A surprise. My stomach tightened. Even as a child, I knew that tone. Storm weather. My mother spoke carefully, I thought. Maybe this could be good for us. Long silence. Then came his voice, stripped bare of performance. Cold, sharp, honest in a way cruelty sometimes becomes when it stops pretending. Another mouth to feed. My mother inhaled sharply. Marco? No, he said flatly. Do not make this sentimental. We barely keep up now. Another child means more expenses. More noise, more inconvenience, more dependence. Dependence. That word stayed with me because it revealed him. He did not hear wife, family, blessing. He heard burden tied to control. Children are joy to loving hearts. To controlling hearts, children can become leverage. My mother's voice hardened slightly. This is your child, he answered immediately. This is my responsibility. That is different silence. Then my mother said something brave, small, quiet brave. This baby is not a bill, Marco. His response came like ice. Everything is a bill. Another silence. Then, if you were more careful with money, maybe this would feel different. There it was again. His oldest trick. Turn guilt outward, lay blame elsewhere, make her carry what belonged to him. But something in my mother had shifted. I could hear it. She no longer folded so easily. You control every dollar, she said quietly. How exactly? Am I careless with money? I never touch. Silence. Heavy silence. The kind that means danger. Then a sharp sound, a lamp crashing. My mother gasped. I sat upright in bed. Heart pounding, then his voice, lower than I had ever heard it, quiet rage, the most frightening kind. Watch how you speak to me. My mother's breathing sounded shaky now, but she did not retreat. I am tired, Marco. Tired. Yes. Tired of what? Her answer came soft, but it carried years inside it. Tired of living like peace depends on pretending you are kind. Silence. Absolute silence. Then came a sentence that changed how I understood my father forever. He laughed softly and said, You think anyone would believe you? That was his true face. Not anger, not shouting. Confidence. The confidence of a man protected by reputation. The confidence of a man who knows masks are powerful. That is another cruelty abused people carry. The terror of not being believed, because charming monsters build witnesses for their innocence long before accusations arrive. They collect admirers, good deeds, public affection, community trust. So when truth finally speaks, it sounds unbelievable, and victims begin doubting even their own memory. My mother's voice dropped low, not broken, not pleading, clear, almost frighteningly clear. I am beginning not to care who believes me. I still remember what followed. Nothing. No shouting. No crashing. No threats. Just silence. But sometimes silence is louder than violence. Sometimes silence is the sound of power shifting. The next morning, my father was perfect. Flowers on the table, breakfast from the bakery, coffee made for my mother, a kiss on her forehead, a hand resting lovingly on her stomach. He smiled at her with such tenderness that if you had seen it, you would have thought I imagined everything I heard. That is what manipulation does. It creates emotional whiplash, cruelty, then kindness, fear, then comfort, pain, then apology, storm, then sunshine. And sunshine after storms feels so beautiful that people mistake relief for love. That is how cycles continue. But my mother no longer looked relieved. She looked different now. Alert. Watchful. Her eyes were open now. Once truth opens your eyes, you cannot comfortably go blind again. That week, she started preparing faster. More cash hidden away, important documents copied, phone numbers memorized, and every night that black notebook grew heavier with truth. Dates, threats, insults, money withheld, objects broken, moments witnessed, patterns documented. Evidence is powerful. Because lies depend on fog, truth writes weatherproof records. Then something happened that shook my mother deeply. One afternoon, I came home from school unusually quiet. I went straight to my room. No snack, no cartoons, no talking. That was unlike me. My mother followed. She found me sitting on the edge of my bed, shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the floor. She sat beside me and brushed hair from my forehead. "What happened, sweetheart?" I swallowed hard, then whispered, "Dad came to school." Her body went still. "What do you mean? He picked me up early." Her face changed instantly. Cold fear, sharp attention. "He signed me out?" I nodded. "He said you forgot me." My mother's breathing quickened. I looked up, and finally said, the thing that shattered whatever peace remained inside her. "He was angry in the car." Tears filled my eyes. He grabbed my face hard because I was crying and said boys who cry grow up weak. My mother went pale. "What else?" I touched my cheek. "He squeezed here." Her eyes followed my hand, and she saw it, faint red finger marks, blooming on my skin. Not bruised yet, but there. Proof, visible, real. My mother stared at those marks like she was looking at fire, and something sacred inside her transformed. Women can survive 1,000 wounds to themselves, but harm their child, and suddenly, mercy dies. She stood slowly, very slowly, too calmly, walked to the kitchen, opened the flour tin, counted hidden money, then reached beneath the couch and pulled out the black notebook. She opened to a blank page and wrote one sentence. "He touched my son," then beneath it, "Now we leave." That was the moment survival became war, and Marco had no idea. His ending had already begun. There are moments in life that divide everything into two worlds, before and after. For my mother, the red marks on my cheek were that dividing line before that moment. She had still been enduring, still hoping, still bargaining privately with pain, still telling herself she could absorb enough of Marco's darkness to keep it from reaching me. But love has limits where children are concerned. Not because love becomes smaller, because it becomes fierce. Because something ancient wakes, something protective, something heaven built into mothers before language ever existed. My mother looked at those finger marks on my face, and whatever fear had been keeping her still began dying that very hour. Fear is powerful, but once a mother sees her child bleeding, fear starts losing elections inside her heart. Resolve begins winning. That evening, she became strangely calm. Not cheerful, not frightened. Calm in a way that felt deliberate. Focused. Like a woman walking toward a door she had already decided to open. She made dinner. She helped me with homework. She folded laundry. She kissed my forehead a little longer than usual. She rested one hand on her pregnant belly often, as if silently speaking promises only Sophia could hear. And she watched the clock. Waiting, measuring, preparing. I did not understand it then, but now I know. Quiet women become most dangerous when they stop reacting emotionally and start moving strategically. Emotion makes noise. Strategy moves silently. That night, Marco came home late. He smelled like whiskey and expensive cologne. He walked in smiling too hard. That exaggerated charm he wore whenever guilt lived underneath his skin. He loosened his tie, kissed my mother's cheek, rubbed her belly gently, and crouched to my level. "How is my boy?" I flinched. Just slightly. But he saw it. And so did my mother. A shadow crossed her face. Children should run toward fathers, not brace for them. He touched my cheek, where the faint marks were beginning to darken. Almost gently, performing tenderness over damage he caused. "Still sore?" he asked softly. My throat tightened. I nodded. He smiled sadly, as if he were the wounded one. "I told you in the car I was sorry for grabbing too hard. Men make mistakes. That is how boys learn forgiveness." That line revealed everything about men like Marco. They call harm a lesson. They call cruelty discipline. They call fear respect. They call ownership love. They rename poison until victims start swallowing it. Willingly. My mother finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, controlled. But steel lived beneath it now. "He is not your lesson to teach." Marco slowly stood, turned toward her. Their eyes locked. Something invisible moved through the room. Two people silently realizing they were no longer standing in the same marriage. His smile faded. "What does that mean?" My mother folded a dish towel carefully, neatly, deliberately. "It means he is a child, not clay for you to break into whatever shape makes you feel powerful." Silence. My father stared. Not angry at first, surprised. Controlling men become arrogant. They begin believing fear is permanent. They mistake compliance for surrender. They forget that silent endurance often has an expiration date. Marco laughed once coldly. "Someone is feeling brave." My mother met his gaze. "No," she said softly. "Someone is feeling finished." That line landed like thunder. I still remember the look on his face. It was not rage, not immediately. It was disbelief, like a king hearing rebellion whispered from a servant he thought belonged to him forever. Then came anger. Slow, rising. Dark. He stepped toward her. My mother did not move, not 1 inch. One hand rested over her belly. The other reached behind her, touching my shoulder, anchoring me behind her. Even now, when I think about courage, I think about that hand, steady, protective, wordless, telling me, "Stay behind me. I am here." He lowered his voice. That dangerous whisper, "You think carrying another child makes you untouchable?" My mother answered immediately, "No then. It makes me responsible." That shook him. Because responsibility is stronger than fear. Responsibility makes ordinary people extraordinary. Responsibility turns trembling hands steady. Responsibility makes escape feel necessary instead of impossible. Marco's face darkened. Then suddenly, the phone rang, sharp, unexpected. The moment broke. My mother stepped back and answered. It was Rosa. Her timing felt almost holy. My mother listened, then said, "Yes, tomorrow morning is fine," hung up. Marco narrowed his eyes. "What tomorrow morning?" My mother turned calmly. "She offered to drive me to a prenatal appointment." He stared. "You have me." Her answer came smooth as silk. "You were busy today." That was true. He had been drinking while grabbing our son's face hard enough to leave marks. But truth spoken plainly can cut like insult. He stepped close, very close, close enough that his breath touched her skin, then smiled. The smile he wore when planning cruelty. "Be careful, Elena," he whispered. "Pregnancy makes women emotional. Emotional women make foolish choices." My mother smiled back faintly, but there was something new in her eyes, something Marco failed to recognize. "Freedom beginning. Sometimes foolish choices," she said quietly. "Save lives," he frowned slightly. He did not understand. Yet, that night, after he fell asleep, my mother woke me gently. Moonlight filled my room. Her face was calm, her eyes clear. She knelt beside my bed and brushed hair from my forehead. "Luca," she whispered, "I need you to be brave tomorrow." Children know when life is changing. I sat up. My heart pounded. "Are we in trouble?" She smiled sadly. "No, sweetheart." Then she kissed my forehead and whispered the sentence that changed my whole life. "We are going somewhere fear cannot follow us." I looked at her, at the small overnight bag beside her feet, at the tears she refused to let fall, at the quiet courage glowing all around her, and for the first time, I saw my mother not as fragile, not as sad, not as scared. I saw her as something else, something fierce, something sacred, something no monster should ever corner, a mother with nothing left to lose. Morning was coming, and with it, the kitchen confrontation that would leave blood on the floor and send us running toward freedom with $200 and faith. Night before escape scenes are often where stories become loud, but ours became strangely quiet. That is how courage entered my mother, not with thunder, not with dramatic speeches, not with rage, quietly, like dawn slipping into darkness one soft inch at a time, until suddenly, night is over. After whispering that we were going somewhere, fear could not follow us. My mother sat on the edge of my bed for a long time. Moonlight rested gently across her face. Her hand moved slowly over my hair the way she used to when I was very small and nightmares woke me crying. Only now, I realize, she was memorizing me. Not because she feared losing me, because she knew the next day would change everything, and courage often pauses briefly to honor what it is about to protect. "Do you trust me?" she asked softly. I nodded immediately, with everything. Her eyes filled. Not broken tears, sacred tears. The kind truth pulls from places fear has lived too long. She smiled faintly. "Then tomorrow, no matter what happens, stay close to me." "I will. If I say run." "You run." My throat tightened. "Without you!" She shook her head. "There is nowhere I am going without you." Then she placed my little hand on her stomach. The baby kicked gently beneath her skin. I gasped. My mother laughed softly. "That is your sister reminding us she is part of this plan too." I smiled. For one small, beautiful second. We were simply family. No fear. No storm. Just mother, son, unborn daughter, and hope sitting quietly in moonlight. Then her face grew serious again. "Listen carefully, Luca." I nodded. Her voice lowered, not frightened, focused. "If anyone asks questions tomorrow, you let me answer." "Okay." "If Dad gets angry." My little body stiffened. She immediately touched my cheek, gently. "He does not get to own your peace anymore." That sentence became prophecy. Then she said something I would not fully understand until adulthood. "Some people mistake kindness for permission to hurt you," she whispered. But kindness has boundaries, and when those boundaries are crossed long enough, kindness learns how to leave. That was Elena, even in escape, teaching, even in fear, giving wisdom, even while breaking, making sure I grew whole. The next morning began beautifully. That was Marco's favorite camouflage. He often wrapped cruelty in pleasant mornings, as if sunlight could erase darkness. The kitchen smelled of garlic, butter, and bread warming in the oven. My mother stood at the stove making his favorite pasta sauce from scratch. 8 months pregnant, feet swollen, body exhausted, heart already halfway out the door, and still performing normal. Because survival sometimes asks you to act until escape becomes possible. I sat at the kitchen table coloring quietly. A small duffel bag was hidden in the hall closet. Cash tucked deep inside, documents folded neatly beneath clothes. The black notebook wrapped in a sweater. 2 tiny outfits for Sophia, my teddy bear. My mother had packed our future in one bag, $200. 1 witness notebook, a pregnant woman's courage and faith. Sometimes that is all freedom starts with. Then Marco came downstairs, freshly showered, button-down shirt crisp, hair perfectly combed, smile easy, the handsome mask polished bright. He kissed my mother's cheek, wrapped one arm around her waist, touched her belly lovingly. How are my girls this morning? If evil had a softer costume, it would look like that. My mother kept stirring sauce. We are fine, he tasted from the spoon, paused, and there it was, the shift, that invisible darkening. Too much garlic, a tiny thing, always tiny things. Cruel men build wars from crumbs. He set the spoon down carefully, too carefully. This tastes burnt. It is not burnt, my mother said calmly. It is roasted garlic. His jaw tightened. Do not correct me. I am explaining. I did not ask for explanation. Silence. I stopped coloring. My mother stayed calm. It is breakfast, Marco, not battle. Wrong sentence. True sentence, dangerous sentence. His eyes changed instantly. Not rage. Humiliation control hates being named aloud. He moved fast, slamming the spoon across the kitchen. Metal clattered hard against cabinets. Sauce splattered red across white walls like warning. You think you are clever now. My mother stepped back instinctively, one hand covering her belly, the other subtly motioning me behind her. Always protecting, always. I think I am tired, she said quietly. He laughed darkly. Tired of what? Being taken care of. Then his eyes landed on me, and everything changed. What are you staring at? I froze, my heart pounding wildly. He stepped toward me, anger looking for weaker ground, and before he could reach me, my mother moved. Not slowly, not carefully, fiercely. She placed herself between us instantly, arms spread, pregnant body, becoming shield, lioness-made flesh. Her voice came low, steady, terrifyingly clear. Do not touch my son. That line hit the room like lightning. Marco stopped. For one heartbeat, shock then fury. Real fury. Because ownership had just been challenged. Because prey had grown teeth. Because quiet women become frightening when fear leaves them. He shoved her, hard, too hard. Her body slammed against the edge of the kitchen counter. A sickening crack. Then, blood, bright red running down her forehead. I screamed, and Marco, for the first time, looked afraid. Not afraid for her. Afraid of what he had just awakened, because my mother slowly straightened, blood running down her face, one hand on the counter, one hand over Sophia, eyes burning with something holy and fierce, and she looked at him like he was already gone from her life. Then she said the words that ended his power forever. You will never touch us again. And Marco still did not understand. The war was over. He had already lost. The leaving begins next. The bruise, the hotline Rosa, the shelter Marco's pursuit, and Elena quietly starting his destruction through the notebook. My father always believed power lived in force, in volume, in fear, in making other people feel small enough that he could feel large. Men like Marco mistake intimidation for strength because they have never learned the harder thing: how to lead without crushing, how to love without owning how to be respected, without being feared. They call domination masculinity. They call control protection. They call silence obedience. And when the people they built cages around finally walk away, they call betrayal what was really liberation. My father was about to learn a brutal truth. The most dangerous thing an abusive man can create is a woman who no longer fears losing him. Blood ran down my mother's temple in a thin crimson line, not fast, slowly, quietly, like a final warning written in red. For a strange, suspended second, nobody moved. My father stared. My mother stared back. I stood frozen, and in that silence, something invisible changed ownership. Fear left my mother and entered him. Not because she screamed, not because she attacked, not because she threatened revenge, because she became calm. Calm terrifies guilty people. Calm means decision has already been made. Calm means pleading is over. Calm means the door inside someone has quietly closed. My mother straightened fully, wiped blood from her eyebrow with the back of her hand, and looked at him with absolute clarity. Then she said in a low voice, "Get out of my way." Not our way. My way. That choice of words mattered, because in that moment, Elena had become fully herself again. Not property, not wife under control, not frightened woman shrinking to survive. Herself. Marco blinked. Confusion moved across his face, then came the familiar pivot. The manipulator's turn. Cruel men often become gentle the moment consequences appear. He softened his voice instantly. "Elena, baby, I did not mean." She lifted one hand. He stopped talking. Just stopped. I had never seen that happen. Never. She did not raise her voice, did not tremble, did not cry. She simply spoke truth. "You always mean enough." Silence. His mouth opened, closed. Opened again. "That is not fair." Fair men who wound others often cry fairness. When boundaries finally appear. My mother laughed once, quietly. "Without joy, fair," she said. "You have mistaken my endurance for permission." That line cut him. I saw it. He stepped forward carefully. Palms slightly raised. "Please do not do this emotionally." Another trick. Rename her clarity emotion. Make truth sound unstable. Make reaction look irrational. But my mother's eyes were clear glass now. "This is not emotion," she said. "This is conclusion. That sentence has lived inside me my whole adult life. This is not emotion. This is conclusion. Sometimes leaving is not dramatic. Sometimes it is simply the final answer to a question pain kept asking too long. Can you endure more? Can you excuse more? Can you shrink more? Can you bleed more? And eventually one day, the answer becomes no. Complete. Quiet. Final. My mother turned toward me. Her face softened instantly. That was her gift. Steel for danger, warmth for love, both living in the same heart. "Luca," she said gently, "go get your shoes." I ran, not from fear, from purpose. Children know when survival becomes movement. I grabbed my sneakers with shaking hands. My little fingers fumbled laces. My heart beat so hard I could hear it. From down the hallway, I heard my father's voice changing shape. Fear turning ugly. "You think you can leave?" My mother answered calmly. "Yes." "With what money?" Silence. "Then, with whatever dignity you did not manage to kill." That was Elena, quiet. Precise, mercilessly honest. He laughed harshly. "You have nowhere to go." Her answer came like a blade wrapped in silk. "Anywhere is somewhere when hell is what you are leaving." I still get chills remembering that line. Broken people do not always leave loudly. Sometimes they leave with exhausted courage and one final truth sharp enough to cut chains. I came back into the hallway, wearing one shoe untied. My mother stood near the closet, one hand on her belly, one hand gripping the duffel bag. Blood still marked her face, but somehow she looked radiant. Not physically, spiritually, like freedom had already begun shining through her. My father moved toward the front door and blocked it. There it was. The oldest act of ownership, bar the exit claim space, make freedom feel impossible. He planted both hands on the door frame. "You walk out," he said coldly. "You walk out with nothing." My mother looked at him for a long moment, then smiled sadly. "No," she whispered. "Then, I walk out with everything that matters." She looked at me, touched her stomach, and in that moment, Marco understood something that wounded his ego more than any accusation ever could. He was no longer included in what mattered. That realization broke something ugly loose in him. "You will come crawling back." "No, you cannot survive without me." Watchful silence. Then my mother gave him the sentence that truly began his downfall. "I survived you. Living without you will feel like breathing." Truth is devastating when spoken plainly. He looked stunned, not angry, hollowed, because controlling people build their identity around being necessary. The moment they become irrelevant, their illusion collapses. My mother reached for the doorknob. He grabbed her wrist, hard, and that is when Rosa's voice thundered from outside. "Marco, take your hand off her!" Every head turned. Through the front window, Rosa stood in the driveway. Beside her, a police cruiser, and another car, domestic violence advocate. Witnesses. Light entering darkness. Marco's face drained of color. He looked at my mother. Realization dawning. Slowly, terribly. She had prepared quietly, carefully, patiently. The notebook, the records, the photographs, the witnesses, the calls, the money, the plan. Quiet women are often building exits, while cruel men are still enjoying control. That is the mistake arrogance makes. It mistakes silence for helplessness. But silence can be strategy. Silence can be evidence gathering. Silence can be the sharpening of freedom. My mother gently pulled her wrist free, opened the door. Morning sunlight poured in. Fresh air hit my face. It smelled clean. It smelled possible. It smelled like a world where my stomach would stop hurting. My mother took my hand, held the duffel bag, placed her other hand over the baby, and walked us into a life she had built in secret. One brave dollar, one hidden note, one painful truth, one quiet act of courage at a time. We did not look back. Because some doors should only close once. And behind us, Marco's public mask had just begun to crack, but his real unraveling had not even started yet. The first thing freedom gave me was quiet. Not the heavy quiet I grew up with. The kind that waits for footsteps, the kind that tightens your chest, the kind that teaches children to measure their breathing, the kind that feels like a room, holding its breath before glass breaks. No, this quiet was different. This quiet exhaled. This quiet rested. This quiet felt like a blanket instead of a warning. For children raised inside fear, safety feels strange at first. Your body does not trust peace immediately. It keeps listening for danger long after danger is gone. It keeps bracing for storms that no longer live overhead. Trauma teaches your nervous system to keep watch long after your eyes close. That was me. Even in safety, I still listened. Still scanned rooms, still flinched at loud sounds, still expected kindness to disappear suddenly. Healing is slow when fear helped raise you, but love, steady love, can reteach the body what peace feels like. Rosa drove us to a women's shelter 40 minutes away. I remember almost nothing about the road. Shock makes memory strange. Some moments become sharp forever. Others disappear completely. I remember my mother's hand gripping mine the entire drive. I remember blood drying dark at her hairline. I remember her rubbing circles over her belly every few minutes, whispering softly to Sophia like she was calming both of them at once. And I remember Rosa driving with one hand on the wheel and one hand resting near my mother's shoulder. close enough to touch if needed. That is another thing pain teaches. You never forget who stood beside you when your life was collapsing. Some people become permanent in your soul because of 1 hour of courage. Rosa became that for us. Halfway there, my mother finally spoke. Very quietly, almost like she was speaking to herself. I should have left sooner. Rosa did not answer immediately. Wise people know timing matters. Then she said softly, "You left when leaving became stronger than staying." My mother stared out the window. "He touched Luca." Rosa nodded once. "I know." Tears slipped down my mother's face. "I failed him." Rosa's voice sharpened. No, my mother looked at her. Rosa kept her eyes on the road. "You did not fail him," she said firmly. "You stood between cruelty and your child for years. You carried more weight than anyone should. Then when harm crossed the final line, you moved." Silence. Then Rosa added, "That is not failure, Elena. That is courage under impossible circumstances." My mother cried quietly after that, not broken crying. Releasing crying, the kind that comes when shame finally meets compassion. Sometimes healing begins the moment someone tells you the truth about your strength. Abuse lies. It tells victims they are weak, that they are stupid, that they are trapped because they deserve trapping. That staying means complicity, that leaving means selfishness. But truth says something else. Survival is complex. Endurance is exhausting. Fear is powerful, and courage often arrives late. But when it arrives, it still counts. That mattered for my mother. Because shame had lived in her too long, when we reached the shelter, I expected sadness, gray walls, hard faces, hopelessness. Instead, I found warmth, soft yellow walls, clean blankets, children's drawings taped to hallways, a basket of stuffed animals near the front desk, coffee brewing somewhere. Gentle voices' safety had an atmosphere, and it smelled like fresh laundry, coffee, and second chances. A woman named Miriam greeted us, mid-50s, kind eyes, strong posture, the kind of woman whose softness clearly came from surviving sharp things. She knelt in front of me first, always me first, that mattered. "Hi, Luca," she said gently. "You are very brave." I looked down. I was scared. She smiled softly. "Brave people usually are." That sentence planted something important in me. Courage is not lack of fear. Courage is movement despite fear. My mother lowered her head and whispered, "I do not know what I am doing." Miriam stood and took both her hands. "You already did the hardest part," she said. "You walked out." Those words became our doorway into rebuilding. But while we were learning safety, Marco was learning something he had never learned before. Consequences. At first, he performed regret. Flowers delivered, voicemails, tears, apologies, church elders calling, mutual friends reaching out. The same charming mask, now weaponized into sympathy. "I just want my family back. I made one mistake. She is emotional because of pregnancy. I am trying." This is how manipulative men rewrite history. Years of cruelty become one mistake. Patterns become accidents. Terror becomes misunderstanding. Control becomes concern. The victim becomes unstable. The abuser becomes wounded. It is theater. And many audiences clap because they only know the public version. But my mother had receipts. The black notebook, dates, threats, money withheld, property broken, medical records, witness statements, photographs, voice recordings. Rosa secretly helped preserve. Truth had documentation now, and lies hate records. Then Marco made the mistake that truly began destroying him. He came to the shelter, not inside, outside, waiting, watching. That is when my mother stopped being merely a survivor and quietly became the architect of his downfall. Because some revenge does not scream. Some revenge simply stands in truth long enough, and lets darkness expose itself. My father did not come to the shelter because he loved us. That is an important truth. Control often disguises itself as love, because love sounds noble while control sounds ugly. But noble things do not stalk. Noble things do not intimidate. Noble things do not circle places of refuge like wolves, testing fences. Love protects freedom. Control fears it. What waited outside that shelter was not love. It was wounded ownership. And wounded ownership is dangerous because it cannot understand this simple truth. People are not possessions. My mother understood immediately what his presence meant. The moment Miriam came into our small room and quietly said, "Elena, Marco is outside." I watched all warmth leave my mother's face. Not panic, recognition. She knew his patterns. Cruel men become most unpredictable when humiliation enters the story. And public humiliation had begun touching him. Neighbors were whispering. Church friends were asking questions. Mrs. Donnelly had stopped waving. Men at the neighborhood cookouts were suddenly distant. Because Rosa had done something powerful, she told truth plainly. No embellishment, no drama, no gossip. Just truth, and truth, spoken calmly, carries unusual weight. My mother stood slowly from the edge of the bed. Sophia shifted beneath her skin. One hand rested over her belly, automatically. The other found mine, always finding mine, always anchoring me. "What does he want?" she asked quietly. Miriam's face tightened. "He says he wants to apologize. He says he wants to see his family." My mother laughed once, a tired laugh. Not bitter, clear. "He does not want family," she said softly. "He wants access." That line was truth sharpened by experience. Abusive people rarely mourn connection. They mourn lost access to control, lost access to your mind, your emotions, your body, your fear, your availability, your silence. Your willingness to keep protecting their reputation while they damage your soul. Freedom enrages them because freedom ends access. Miriam looked at my mother carefully. "We can call police." My mother thought for a moment, then said something that surprised me. No, Miriam frowned slightly. "Elena, he needs witnesses," my mother said quietly. "He behaves best when eyes are on him." That was wisdom earned in fire. Darkness performs differently in light. Cruel men love privacy because privacy protects masks. Public settings force restraint. Witnesses make truth harder to twist. My mother looked at me and knelt. Her voice softened immediately. "Stay here with Miriam for a few minutes." Fear tightened my chest. "Do not go near him." Her eyes held mine. "I will not." "Promise." She touched my cheek gently. "I promise." Then she kissed my forehead and stood. I watched from the hallway window. That scene lives in me permanently. My mother stepped outside, looking smaller than I remembered. Pregnant, bruised, tired, financially broken, carrying trauma like invisible weight. And somehow, she looked stronger than my father. Marco stood beside his expensive car wearing a crisp, button-down shirt. Expensive watch glinting in sunlight. Flowers in one hand, perfect public husband costume. He smiled when he saw her, that polished smile, the one half the world trusted. He held out flowers. She did not take them. Even from a distance, I could read his mouth. "Elena, please." My mother stood still, hands at her sides, calm. Stillness can become terrifying when it belongs to someone no longer easily moved. He stepped closer, she stepped back. Boundary. Clear, visible, that wounded him immediately. His shoulders tightened, his performance cracked slightly. Then came tears, actual tears. That shocked me later when I understood it. Manipulators can cry sincerely, not always because they grieve hurting you, but because they grieve losing power. Pain can be real while motives remain selfish. He was crying for himself, not us. I later learned what he said. "I made mistakes," he told her. "But I love you. I love Luca. I want my family back." My mother answered quietly. "You loved obedience. You loved control. You loved being needed. Love does not leave bruises on children. Simple truth. Impossible to argue with. Honestly, he wiped his eyes. You are ruining my life. That line says everything about him. Not, I ruined lives. Not, I hurt my family. Not, I need help. No, you are ruining my life. Victims somehow become villains in abusers' stories because accountability feels like persecution to selfish hearts. My mother's answer was devastating. No, Marco, she said softly. I am simply no longer helping you hide what you are. That sentence broke him more than screaming ever could, because exposure terrifies darkness. Masks are fragile things. They crack quickly when truth stops cooperating with lies. He grew angry, sharp gestures, harsh jaw, raised voice, performance fading, and then he forgot where he was. Forgot witnesses, forgot cameras, forgot staff watching, forgot police presence nearby, forgot his mask. He grabbed her arm, hard, shouting now, "You belong with me!" That was the moment. The true public crack, not rumor, not accusation. Visible truth. Miriam witnessed it. Security cameras caught it. Police stepped in. Staff rushed forward. Witnesses multiplied instantly. And my mother, God, I can still see her, stood straight, looked him dead in the eye, and calmly said, I was never yours. I was only trapped near you. That line ended something ancient. Ownership died there. The officers pulled him back. He shouted, threatened, pleaded, cried, raged, every version of himself spilling out at once because masks collapse messily, and everyone saw. Finally, everyone saw. But my mother was not watching him anymore. She had turned away. When women finally become done, they stop looking back emotionally. That is when endings become real. She walked inside, closed the door, and for the first time since I was born, Marco was outside, and we were safe inside. That was our first true victory. But my mother's greatest battle was still ahead. Giving birth to Sophia, fighting Marco, legally rebuilding financially, and teaching one frightened little boy how to become a gentle man instead of a wounded one. That is where her greatest strength would live. Not in leaving. In rebuilding what fear almost destroyed. Leaving is dramatic. Rebuilding is sacred. People celebrate escape because escape looks heroic. Doors closing, suitcases, packed tears, courage, freedom. But what comes after is harder, quietly harder. No applause, no dramatic music. Just bills, healing, paperwork, nightmares, loneliness, court dates, exhaustion, and waking each morning choosing hope when fear still lives in your bones. That is where many survivors perform their greatest miracle. Not in leaving darkness, but in building light afterward. That was my mother's real masterpiece. 2 weeks after we arrived at the shelter, Sophia came into the world. Labor started just after midnight. I woke to muffled pain sounds from the small room beside mine. Miriam rushed in, lights turned on. Staff moved quickly. Rosa arrived still wearing slippers and a heavy coat thrown over pajamas. Hair wild, eyes alert. Love does not care what it is wearing when it shows up. I remember Rosa kneeling in front of me while adults moved around us. Listen to me, handsome, she said gently. Tonight, your little sister is coming. Your job is simple. I swallowed hard. What job? She smiled. Keep believing your mother can do hard things. That became one of the guiding truths of my life. Believe in the people who carry impossible things. My mother labored for 14 hours. 14. No husband holding her hand. No loving partner whispering encouragement. No warm home nursery waiting. Only pain, uncertainty, fear, and fierce determination. Yet she brought Sophia into this world with a kind of holy grit I still struggle to describe. When Miriam finally carried that tiny pink-faced baby into the room where I waited, wrapped in a white blanket, eyes squeezed shut, fists clenched like she had entered life ready to fight, I cried, not little tears, big shaking tears. She is beautiful, I whispered. Rosa laughed softly. She looks angry. She looks brave, I said. My mother overheard, tired beyond words, hair damp with sweat, face pale, body exhausted, spirit radiant. She smiled weakly at me. No, she whispered. She looks free. Free, that word hung in the room like sunlight, because Sophia would never know the version of life that raised me. She would never listen for keys and locks with fear, never measure footsteps, never learn silence as protection, never confuse love with control, never apologize for existing. My mother made sure of that, and that is legacy, breaking pain so it does not become inheritance. Many families pass trauma down, like old furniture, scarred, heavy, unquestioned. My mother broke that chain with bleeding hands. That is generational courage. Not talk, not slogans. Sacrifice. Months passed. We moved into a tiny subsidized apartment on the east side of town. 1 bedroom, thin walls, old carpet, leaky faucet, second-hand furniture, a kitchen so small 2 people could barely stand in it comfortably. To me, it felt like a palace, because peace lived there. No tension in walls, no sudden shouting, no eggshell floors, just ordinary struggle and quiet love. That is wealth. Many rich homes never know. My mother found work answering phones at a small medical office. Nothing glamorous. Long hours, modest pay. But every paycheck represented freedom earned honestly. Every dollar carried dignity. At night, after feeding Sophia and helping me with homework, she studied accounting classes, computer basics, financial literacy, resume workshops, healing groups, parenting classes, legal paperwork. She built herself while raising us, brick by exhausted brick, and somehow she still found softness, still made pancakes, still kissed foreheads, still read bedtime stories, still laughed, still planted beauty in ordinary days. That is what amazes me most looking back. Pain did not make her cruel. Pain did not make her cold. Pain did not recruit her into bitterness. Broken people often face a choice: bleed on others or heal enough to make sure the bleeding stops with them. My mother chose healing again and again. That is rare strength, but I was not healing as smoothly. Fear had roots in me, deep roots. I had nightmares, wet sheets, sudden panic, anger I did not understand, silence that stretched too long. I flinched when teachers touched my shoulder unexpectedly. I hated loud male voices. I distrusted kindness from men. Part of me believed every smiling man had darkness hidden behind his teeth. Trauma had taught me suspicion. One afternoon, after I shoved another boy at school for yelling near me, the principal called my mother in. I expected disappointment. Instead, that night she sat beside me on our little couch while Sophia slept nearby. She pulled me gently against her shoulder and said, "Tell me where the anger lives." Not, "Why did you do that?" Not, "What is wrong with you?" Not, "Behave better." No, "Tell me where the anger lives." That is emotional wisdom, I cried hard, harder than I ever had. It lives everywhere, I whispered. My mother held me tightly. Then she said words that helped save me from becoming my father. Pain is allowed to visit your heart, Luca, but pain is not allowed to become your character. I want to repeat that because it is one of the greatest truths I have ever been given. Pain may visit your heart, but pain must never become your character. Cruelty tries to clone itself. Hurt people often hurt people, because pain begs reproduction. But gentleness is rebellion against inherited darkness. My mother was raising rebellion in me. Not loud rebellion, quiet goodness, quiet strength, quiet gentleness. The kind my father never understood. And while we were slowly rebuilding, Marco was slowly unraveling. Public sympathy faded, legal consequences grew, his reputation cracked wider. Money problems started. Friends disappeared, and years later, when he finally came back trying to reach what he destroyed, he found a woman so transformed, she no longer knew how to emotionally belong to the man who broke her. That quiet reckoning was still coming, and it would be more devastating than revenge shouted in anger. because indifference from someone you once controlled is a funeral for ego. My father spent years believing he was unforgettable. Men like Marco build their identities around permanence. They believe fear makes them unforgettable. They believe financial control makes them indispensable. They believe emotional manipulation creates lifelong gravity. They believe the people they wound will forever orbit around the damage they caused. That is arrogance born from cruelty. Because cruel people misunderstand something profound. People do not spend their whole lives worshiping what broke them. Eventually, they heal. Eventually, they rebuild. Eventually, the center of their emotional world moves somewhere new, and when that happens, the person who once held power becomes little more than an old storm the house no longer remembers fearing. My father was about to learn that truth in the cruelest way possible. Through irrelevance, years passed. The little apartment became a townhouse. The townhouse became a modest home with a small backyard. My mother planted roses there first. Always roses. She said flowers were proof that beautiful things can grow after brutal seasons. Watching her kneel in soil with dirt on her hands and sunlight on her face, I often thought the same thing. Some people do not survive darkness. They compost it and grow gardens. That was Elena. Not merely survivor, creator, builder, cycle breaker. My mother finished school, worked her way up, then higher still. Eventually, she became office manager at a regional medical practice, respected, financially secure, deeply competent, quietly admired. Not flashy success, steady success, honest success, the kind that feels rooted instead of borrowed. Sophia grew into exactly what my mother prayed for. Free, loud laughter. Sharp mind, confident walk, fearless opinions, a girl who took up space without apology, a girl who never learned shrinking as survival, a girl untouched by Marco's darkness except through stories told carefully when she was old enough to understand what her mother escaped. That was victory, not wealth, not revenge, freedom becoming normal. As for me, I carried scars longer. Boys raised under domination often grow into one of two men, the kind who repeats pain, or the kind terrified of ever causing it. I became the second kind, almost too gentle, apologizing too much, overthinking conflict, walking away from confrontation too quickly, afraid anger itself might awaken something inherited. But therapy helped me understand. Anger is not abuse. Strength is not domination. Masculinity is not fear. Leadership is tenderness with backbone. Protection without ownership. Power without cruelty. That was the man I chose to become. The opposite of Marco in every deliberate way, and my mother, God. She watched that transformation with quiet pride shining in her eyes. One evening, when I was 26, married, and expecting my first child, we sat together on her back porch watching fireflies blink over the grass. Summer air, soft breeze, rose bushes blooming, peace everywhere. My mother looked over at me and smiled. "You stayed soft." I laughed quietly. "What?" Her eyes warmed. "In a hard world," she said softly, "you stayed soft." Then I remembered her words from childhood, "Stay soft in a hard world." That is harder than becoming hard yourself. She had spent decades growing that softness in me, like tending fragile seed in difficult ground, and somehow, against all odds, it lived. Then came the knock. Life is strange. Sometimes, the ghosts you buried politely return dressed in regret. I opened the door, and there stood Marco older, gray at the temples, shoulders slightly bent, expensive clothes replaced by ordinary ones. No luxury watch. No polished car. No commanding presence. Just a man hollowed out by consequence. For a moment, I did not recognize him. Not because his face changed, because his power was gone. Control had once made him look larger than life. Without it, he looked painfully ordinary. That is another truth. Many tyrants look small once fear leaves the room. He looked at me with wet eyes. "Luca," I said, Nothing. He swallowed hard. I heard about the baby. Still silence. He nodded awkwardly. I wanted to congratulate you. I looked at him calmly. No hatred, no longing, no fear, nothing he expected, just distance. Emotional distance is the final locked door. Anger still means someone can reach you. Hatred still means they live inside you, but indifference. Indifference means they have become history. He felt it instantly. Pain moved across his face. I deserve that, he said quietly. Then he looked past me, toward my mother standing in the kitchen doorway. Still beautiful, still warm, still steady, only now completely beyond him. He stared at her like a starving man looking through glass at something he could never touch again. Elena. Her face held no bitterness, no softness either. Only peace. And peace can be the coldest consequence for people who once thrived on your emotional reaction. He stepped toward her, voice trembling. I have spent years wanting to say this right and failing. Silence. Then, I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. My mother looked at him quietly, long enough for truth to settle. Then she answered with devastating gentleness. No, Marco. He blinked, she continued. You destroyed the version of me willing to survive you. That line emptied him completely, because he finally understood the woman he loved no longer emotionally existed in the form he remembered. He had not merely lost her, he had helped transform her beyond his reach. That is consequence, not punishment. Consequence. And consequence does not always roar. Sometimes it simply closes a door forever, quietly, while life keeps blooming beautifully on the other side. He cried, real tears this time, not manipulation. Grief, late understanding, late humility, late regret. But some arrivals come after the train has long departed. Timing matters in redemption. Repentance delayed can become sorrow without restoration, he whispered. Can you ever forgive me? My mother answered, with a wisdom only healed people carry. I forgave you years ago. Hope flickered in his eyes. Then she finished. But forgiveness is not invitation. That was Elena. Grace with boundaries, mercy without surrender, healing without reopening wounds. That sentence became his final lesson and mine. Because forgiveness is holy, but wisdom keeps doors locked where danger once lived. My father stood there for a long moment after that. Not speaking, not moving, just standing in the doorway of a life he no longer belonged to. There is a particular kind of grief reserved for people who finally understand what they destroyed, and realize understanding arrived too late to rebuild it. That grief hollowed him in real time. For years, Marco had lived on pride, on control, on the illusion that if he ever wanted us back, he could simply reach out and reclaim what he once possessed. But people are not houses you leave and later re-enter with old keys. He had forgotten that. Or perhaps he never understood it at all. My mother stood before him with calm eyes and steady breathing. Sunlight resting softly on her shoulders from the kitchen window behind her. No fear in her, no anger, no trembling, no need to prove anything, only peace. And peace, when earned after suffering, has a quiet majesty to it. That was the cruelest thing Marco could have faced. Not vengeance, not bitterness, not screaming accusations, not public humiliation, but a woman fully healed beyond his emotional reach. He looked smaller standing before her than I had ever seen him. His voice came out thin. I think about that kitchen every day. My mother said nothing. He swallowed. The blood. Luca's face. Sophia still inside you. His voice cracked. I replay it every night. Silence, then. I keep wondering how I became that man. That is a painful question, and many broken people ask it too late. Cruelty rarely arrives in one giant leap. It grows where selfishness is fed, where entitlement is protected, where insecurity becomes domination, where accountability is avoided, where pain is weaponized instead of healed. Monsters are often built gradually, choice by choice. excuse by excuse, harm by harm, until one day they wake inside a soul they no longer recognize. But by then, others have already paid the price, my mother answered softly. You became that man every time you chose power over love. Simple truth, sharp truth. He nodded slowly, tears falling freely now. I was raised hard. My mother's face remained still. So was I, she said quietly. That hit him harder than anything else. Because excuses collapse when someone who survived similar darkness chooses goodness instead. Pain explains behavior. It does not excuse cruelty. Wounds are reasons, not permission slips. That truth matters deeply, because too many people inherit brokenness and then hand it forward like legacy. My mother broke her inheritance. My father repeated his. That was the difference. He looked toward me again, pain in his eyes. I know I do not deserve it. But I would like to know my grandchildren. The younger version of me would have frozen, the frightened boy, the angry teenager, even the wounded young man. But healing had changed me too. I answered calmly. They will know of you. Hope flickered in him. Then I continued, but they will never know fear through you. That line landed exactly where truth always lands. In the center, he closed his eyes, nodded once, acceptance finally entering where denial used to live. I understand, and for the first time in my life, I believed he actually did. People can change. That is true. Late, but true. Not everyone does, but some do. Usually after consequence strips illusion bare. Usually after loneliness forces honest reflection. Usually after pride starves long enough to become humility. My father became gentler in old age, quieter, less certain. More human. He spent years volunteering quietly at shelters for abused families. Not publicly, not for praise, quietly, almost penitently, carrying groceries, repairing broken doors, painting walls, setting up cribs, doing ordinary work in places that protected women from men he once resembled. I heard about it through others, not him. He never used it to ask for redemption that mattered. Real repentance does not advertise itself. It simply becomes different behavior. Still, consequence remained. He died a few years later. Not hated, not embraced. Remembered honestly. That matters too. Honesty is more sacred than false sainthood. At his funeral, attendance was small. No great crowd. No parade of admirers. No towering legacy. Just quiet people. Quiet prayers. Quiet ending. The loud man left quietly. There is a lesson in that. Power built on fear fades quickly. Reputation built on performance dies thin. Control leaves no loving inheritance, but love, steady love, sacrificial love, protective love. That becomes legacy. My mother's legacy lives everywhere. In me, in Sophia, in my children, in how I hold my wife gently, in how laughter sounds safe in my home, in doors that never slam, in apologies spoken quickly, in conflict handled kindly, in children who never learn fear as language, in softness protected instead of mocked. That is Elena's fortress. And it still stands stronger than Marco's storm ever was. Years ago, near the end of her life, I asked my mother a question that had lived quietly in me since childhood. What made you leave that day? She smiled softly, looked out toward her roses, then answered, For years fear asked me to stay small. She paused. But the day I saw pain reaching for my children, her eyes found mine. Love became larger than fear. That is my mother's story, and perhaps that is the deepest truth I know. Strength is not loud. Strength is not domination. Strength is not force. Sometimes strength is a tired pregnant woman with $200, a hidden notebook, blood on her face, a child holding her hand, and enough love in her heart to walk into uncertainty rather than raise her children inside fear. That is strength. That is courage. That is legacy. That is my mother, and everything beautiful in me began with her. Before I end this story, there is one more truth I want to tell you, not about my father, not even about my mother, about what survives. People think trauma only destroys, and yes, it destroys much. Childhood's trust, sleep, ease, innocence, parts of the self that never fully grow back in the shape they once were. That is true. But there is another truth beside it. What is wounded can still become beautiful. Not untouched. Beautiful. Scarred things often become sacred things. Wood struck by lightning grows twisted, but sometimes stronger. Broken earth after fire becomes fertile. A heart that has known sorrow can become extraordinarily gentle because it understands the cost of hardness. Pain can deepen compassion if we refuse to let it become cruelty. That was my mother's greatest victory, not escaping Marco, not rebuilding financially, not exposing him, not even protecting us. Her greatest victory was this: she remained loving without remaining vulnerable to harm. That balance is rare. Some people become walls. Some become wounds. She became wisdom. Strong boundaries. Soft heart, clear eyes. Steady soul that is healing at its highest form. Years after Marco passed, I sat with my daughter, Elena's namesake, on the same back porch where roses still climbed their trellis, like little acts of stubborn beauty. She was 7. The same age I had been when my mother chose freedom. Children have a strange instinct for asking life's deepest questions when the world is quiet. She leaned her head against my arm and asked, "Daddy, what was Grandma Elena like when she was young?" I smiled. Not because the answer was simple, because it was sacred. I looked toward the garden she planted, toward the porch swing she loved, toward the little stone path she built herself, because she believed homes should always have places that invite slow walking. Then I said, "She was the bravest person I have ever known." My daughter looked up. "Like superheroes brave?" I laughed softly. "Braver how?" I thought for a moment, then answered the only honest way I could, because superheroes fight villains in stories where everyone cheers them on. Grandma Elena fought hers quietly, when almost nobody knew she was fighting at all. My daughter was silent, thinking. Then she asked, "Did she win?" I looked at my home, at the sound of my wife laughing in the kitchen, at Sophia's children running barefoot across grass without fear, at generations living freely because one woman chose courage. And I smiled. "Oh yes," I said softly, "she won beautifully." That is how victory often looks in real life. Not dramatic revenge, not public ruin, not applause. Sometimes victory is children sleeping peacefully. Sometimes victory is laughter where fear once lived. Sometimes victory is a daughter growing loud where her mother had to grow quiet. Sometimes victory is a son learning tenderness where violence once taught hardness. Sometimes victory is simply this: the pain stops with you. That is holy work. That is legacy work. That is what my mother did. So if you are listening tonight, morning, afternoon, or late at night, and you are carrying quiet battles nobody sees, hear me clearly. Quiet does not mean weak. Soft does not mean powerless. Gentle does not mean easy to break. And surviving pain does not make you small. Sometimes the strongest people in this world are the ones who quietly decide, "This hurt ends with me." That decision can change generations. My mother changed mine, and if her story touched something in you, honor the quiet heroes in your own life. The mothers, the fathers, the grandparents, the guardians, the friends, the neighbors like Rosa who become shelter when storms come. Speak their names. Tell their stories. Give flowers while hands can still hold them. Love people loudly while life still offers time, because strength often lives in ordinary people doing extraordinary things quietly, and quiet courage deserves remembrance. Before you go, tell me in the comments, who is the quiet hero in your life? I read every comment, every single one. And tonight, I am grateful you listened. If this story stays with you, there is another story waiting for you. One about a woman who went quiet, and in that silence, rebuilt a life nobody thought she could survive. It is not just a story about heartbreak. It is a story about what happens when a woman finally stops shrinking to keep everyone else comfortable. When you are ready, I will meet you there. Good night, or good morning, wherever this story found you, may peace find you too. I did not leave him when we were arguing. I did not leave when I was crying in the bathroom with my hand over my mouth so our daughter would not hear me. I did not leave when I repeated the same pain so many times that even I got tired of my own voice. No, I left when I became quiet. And the cruelest part was this. He thought my silence meant he had finally won. He thought peace had returned to our home. But what he did not understand was that a woman argues when she still cares. She explains when she still believes. She repeats herself when she is still trying to save what is breaking. But when she goes quiet, she is not resting. She is leaving from the inside. Before I tell you how I got there, tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time this story found you. Morning, afternoon. Late at night, I read every comment and I am grateful you are here. Now let me tell you how I lost my voice before I ever walked out the door. My name is Alina Brooks, and for almost 9 years, I believed patience was the same thing as love. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was thinking that if I explained something gently enough, clearly enough, lovingly enough, the man who claimed to love me would finally understand what he was doing to me. And my third mistake was believing that staying quiet made me strong. It did not at first. At first, my silence was fear. Then it became exhaustion. Then it became grief. And finally, it became freedom. But before I became the woman who learned how to stop chasing love that no longer protected her, I was a woman standing in the kitchen at 11:42 p.m., reheating dinner for a man who had not called, had not texted, and had not cared enough to explain why he was 4 hours late. Our daughter, Maya, was 6 years old then. She had fallen asleep on the couch with her school shoes still on, one sock halfway off her foot, her little chest rising and falling beneath the pink blanket she dragged everywhere. She had waited for him because he promised he would help her finish her solar system project. All evening she kept asking, "Is Daddy almost home?" And all evening I kept lying. "He'll be here soon, baby," I said. "He probably got stuck at work. You know, Daddy gets busy." By the fourth time, Maya stopped asking. She just sat beside the cardboard planets we had painted together, holding Saturn in her small hands as if waiting patiently enough would make her father walk through the door and make everything right. But he did not. So I helped her glue the planets myself. I praised her crooked little stars. I took pictures. I told her she did a beautiful job, and when she whispered, "Do you think Daddy forgot?" I smiled so quickly, it hurt my face. "No, sweetheart, Daddy just got busy." That was the kind of woman I was back then. I protected him from the consequences of his own absence, even from his child. When Darian finally came home, he smelled like expensive cologne and outside air. Not alcohol, not perfume, nothing obvious enough for me to grab and hold up like evidence. That was the thing about Darian. He rarely gave me something clean to accuse him with. He gave me shadows. Half-truths changed plans. Late nights. A phone turned face down. A tone in his voice that made me feel foolish for asking normal questions. He walked into the kitchen, loosened his tie, glanced at the covered plate on the counter, then looked at me like I was the problem waiting for him. "You are still up?" Darian asked. I stared at him, not because I wanted to fight, because I wanted him to notice. The cold dinner, the school project, the sleeping child on the couch, the disappointment sitting in the room like a third adult. "You promised Maya you would help with her project," I said. Darian sighed before I even finished. That sigh became the soundtrack of our marriage. "Alina, I had work." "You could have called," I said. "I was busy. A text takes 5 seconds. He rubbed his forehead. "Can we not do this tonight?" And there it was. Do this? That was what he called it whenever I asked him to be accountable. Do this. As if my pain was a performance. As if my questions were noise. As if expecting him to keep a promise to his daughter was some dramatic hobby I had picked up to ruin his evening. I looked toward the living room where Maya slept, her cheek pressed against the couch cushion, her tiny hand still stained with blue paint from planet Earth. "She waited for you," I said quietly. His eyes flicked toward her, then away. "I'll make it up to her," Darian said. I wanted to believe that. I truly did. Because when a woman still loves you, she will take the smallest sentence and build hope out of it. So I nodded. I put his food in the microwave. I told myself he was tired. I told myself work was stressful. I told myself every marriage had seasons. And while the microwave hummed, I stood there with my arms folded across my chest, swallowing the words I should have said. That night was not the night I left. It was not even the night I stopped loving him. It was just one of the many nights where a small piece of me quietly broke. And because I was still speaking, he thought I was still whole. After Darian ate, he did what he always did. He kissed Maya on the forehead while she slept. He came behind me in the kitchen, wrapped an arm around my waist, and kissed my temple like tenderness could erase neglect. "You worry too much," he murmured softly, almost lovingly. That was what made it dangerous. Cruelty is easier to leave when it comes wearing claws. It is much harder when it comes dressed like affection. I gently moved away from him and began rinsing dishes. "You made a promise to her," I said. "I said I'll make it up to her," he snapped. "You always say that." Darian leaned against the counter, his jaw tightening. "What exactly do you want from me, Alina?" I turned off the faucet. I stared at the sink because if I looked directly at him, I knew my voice would rise. And when my voice rose, somehow I always became the problem. "I want partnership," I said. He laughed once. Not loudly, not kindly either. Partnership. Yes. What does that even mean? It means I should not feel like a married single mother. The room went still. Darian straightened. His eyes hardened. "That's dramatic." My chest tightened. Dramatic! Another word he used whenever truth made him uncomfortable. "I am not asking for luxury, Darian." "What are you asking for?" "For you to mean what you say, for you to show up, for me not to have to carry everything emotional in this house." His voice sharpened. "I work hard, Alina. I know you work hard, Darian. I do too. You think money makes itself? This is not about money. I make money as well, but I always put this family first. I put our daughter's needs first. It's always about something with you," he said. That landed hard. Not because it was loud, because it was familiar. There are sentences that become termites in a marriage. Tiny things, repeated often, quietly eating the foundation, until one day the whole house collapses and everyone acts surprised. "It's always something with you." That was his favorite sentence whenever he wanted silence more than truth. I went quiet for a moment. Then I said the truth. "Yes, Darian, it is always something, because what hurts me never gets fixed. It only gets postponed until the next time." He threw his hands up. "I can't keep doing this conversation." And then he walked upstairs. Just like that. Conversation over. Case closed, verdict delivered. My feelings dismissed by the simple act of him leaving the room. I stood alone in the kitchen, listening to his footsteps overhead. Then silence, heavy silence, the kind that sits on your shoulders, the kind that makes your bones tired. I walked into the living room and knelt beside Maya. Her little eyes fluttered open. "Daddy came home?" Maya asked. Her sleepy voice nearly broke me. "Yes, baby. Did he see my planets?" My throat tightened. "Yes. Did he like them?" I swallowed hard. "He loved them." She smiled, satisfied, and drifted back to sleep. And there it was again. Another lie stitched together to protect the image of a father she adored. Another piece of emotional labor he would never even know I carried. I carried his reputation in our home like it was another child I had to raise. That was love in its most foolish form. Not devotion, not loyalty. Self-erasure. Sometimes women think they are keeping peace. What they are really doing is bleeding quietly so no one has to look at the wound, and blood kept hidden still weakens the body. The next morning, Darian was charming. That was his pattern. Distance, conflict, charm, reset. He stood in the kitchen making pancakes shaped like stars for Maya. He danced with her barefoot on the tile floor while old music played softly from his phone. He winked at me. "Peace offering?" Darian asked. Maya giggled. "Mommy, Daddy made star pancakes." I smiled because Maya was smiling, but something small inside me whispered, "This is performance, not repair, still." I ignored that voice, because hope is stubborn. Hope will live in broken houses longer than wisdom ever would. At breakfast, Maya looked up at Darian. "Daddy, are you coming to my school on Friday?" He smiled. "What's Friday?" "My class reading day. I am reading my story in front of everybody." He touched her nose. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." Maya glowed. Children trust promises like they are sacred things. They do not yet know adults break them casually. I looked at Darian, he looked at me. For a second, there was understanding in his eyes, as if he knew what I was silently asking. "Please mean it this time." He nodded once, a quiet assurance, and foolishly. I believed him again, because when love is starving, it mistakes crumbs for a feast. Friday came with rain, not the soft kind that makes a morning feel peaceful, but the heavy gray kind that turns windows blurry and roads impatient. Maya woke up excited anyway. She came into my room at 6:18 a.m. wearing her yellow pajama top and one purple sock, holding 3 folded sheets of paper against her chest. "Mommy," Maya whispered. "Can you hear me read it one more time?" I opened my eyes and smiled before my body was ready to move. "Come here, baby." She climbed into bed beside me and sat cross-legged on top of the blanket. Darian's side of the bed was already empty. That was not unusual. Lately, he left early without waking me. Sometimes, he said it was work. Sometimes, he said it was traffic. Sometimes, he said nothing at all because he had learned that silence could be used as a shield long before I learned it could become a door. Maya smoothed her papers with serious little hands. "My story is called The Brave Little Moon," she announced. I sat up against the headboard. "That sounds beautiful." Maya cleared her throat dramatically, the way children do when they believe the whole world is about to listen. The moon was little, but she was not afraid of the dark because she knew the sun would come back. She looked at me quickly. "Was that good?" "That was perfect," I said with a smile. She smiled and kept reading. Her voice was soft at first, then stronger. Every now and then she stumbled over a word, and when she did, she looked at me with wide, worried eyes. I helped her gently. Not too much, just enough. Because children need support, not someone taking the page out of their hands. When she finished, she hugged the papers to her chest. "Daddy said he's coming." "Right?" Maya asked. There it was, the question I had been hoping she would not ask before breakfast. I reached for my phone from the nightstand. No message from Darian, no missed call. Nothing. I forced my voice to sound light. "Yes, baby. He said he would come." Maya nodded slowly. but her smile did not return all the way. "Can you text him?" "I will." She slid off the bed and walked toward the bathroom. "Tell him I am reading after lunch." Mrs. Gentry said parents can come at 1:00 p.m. "I'll tell him." As soon as she closed the bathroom door, I called Darian. No answer. I texted him. "Maya reads at 1:00 p.m. today. Please don't forget." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, his reply came. "I know." That was it. 2 words. No warmth, no promise, no apology for making me feel like I had to remind a grown man to show up for his child. Still, I held onto those 2 words like they were a signed contract. I know, sometimes, when you are used to being disappointed, even the smallest acknowledgement feels like progress. At 12:42 p.m., I sat in the tiny school auditorium between a grandmother wearing a red church hat and a father holding a bouquet of grocery store flowers. The room smelled like crayons, damp coats, and cafeteria pizza. Children shuffled across the stage, nervous and proud, while parents lifted phones and whispered encouragement. Maya sat in the second row with her class, her hair pulled into 2 neat puffs with yellow ribbons she had picked herself. Every few minutes, she turned around looking for him. Each time she did, I smiled and gave her a small thumbs up. Each time, her eyes went past me to the empty aisle beside the double doors. At 12:58 p.m., I checked my phone. Nothing. At 1:03 p.m., I called. No answer. At 1:09 p.m., Maya's class was called. My stomach tightened. Mrs. Gentry adjusted the microphone and smiled warmly. Our next reader is Maya Brooks, with her story, The Brave Little Moon. Everyone clapped. Maya walked to the microphone. She looked small, standing there. Small, but brave. She unfolded her papers carefully. Then she looked at the back of the room. The double doors remained closed. For 1 second, her little face changed. Not enough for everyone else to notice. But I noticed. A mother always notices the moment her child learns to expect less. Maya looked down and began. My story is called The Brave Little Moon. Her voice trembled on the first line. I lifted my phone and recorded with one hand while wiping my eyes with the other. Not because I was sad that Darian missed a school reading. No, I was sad because I knew I would have to explain his absence again. I would have to smooth the sharp edges. I would have to turn his failure into something soft enough for a 6-year-old heart to hold. And that was becoming my second job. Not wife, not mother, translator. I translated neglect into busyness. I translated broken promises into accidents. I translated emotional absence into hard work. I translated disappointment into something Maya could survive. When Maya finished, the room clapped loudly. She smiled, but it was not the full sunshine smile she had at breakfast. It was smaller, protected. When she came running to me afterward, I wrapped her in my arms. You did amazing, I said. She pulled back and looked toward the doors again. Did Daddy text? Maya asked. I checked my phone even though I already knew. No, baby. Oh, that tiny word hurt worse than any argument Darian and I had ever had. Oh, not anger, not tears. Just a little girl making room inside herself for disappointment. On the drive home, rain tapped against the windshield. Maya sat in the back seat holding her certificate. She was quiet, too quiet. I looked at her through the rearview mirror. Maya. Yes, Mommy. I am proud of you. I know, Mommy. You were brave. She stared out the window. The moon in my story waited for the sun, she said. I nodded slowly. She did. Maya's voice became smaller. But what if the sun forgets to come back? My hands tightened around the steering wheel. There are questions children ask that are not really about stories. I blinked hard. Then the moon learns she can still shine. Maya turned toward the window again. I do not know if that answer helped her, but it changed something in me, because I heard myself say it. And for the first time, I wondered if I believed it for myself. Darian came home that night at 8:26 p.m. Maya was already in bed. I was sitting at the dining table with her certificate in front of me. Not because I wanted to ambush him, because I wanted him to see it, because I wanted guilt to do what love apparently could not. He walked in holding his phone, laughing quietly at something on the screen. When he saw me, the laughter stopped. "What's wrong?" Darian asked. I stared at him. "You missed it." His face shifted, not into shame, into annoyance. That told me everything. "Alina, no, don't Alina me." He dropped his keys into the bowl by the door. "I got pulled into something." "You always get pulled into something. It was important." "So was she." He exhaled sharply. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Make it sound like I don't care about my daughter." I stood up slowly. "Then stop behaving like you don't." His eyes flashed. "That's unfair." "Unfair," I said quietly. "Yes, unfair. You have no idea what pressure I am under. Because you don't tell me, I shouldn't have to report every detail of my day like I am a child. You are not a child, Darian. That's the problem. You are a husband and a father, and somehow I am still begging you to act like both." He stared at me. For a moment, he looked like he might say something honest, something human, something that could have changed the night. Instead, he said, "I am tired." I almost laughed, not because anything was funny, because women become historians in failing relationships. We remember every sentence, every excuse, every promise. Every time a man stands in the ashes and complains about smoke, I pointed toward Maya's certificate. "She looked for you." He glanced at it. "I'll talk to her tomorrow. She should not have to keep being comforted tomorrow because you failed her today." His jaw clenched. I said, "I'll talk to her." "That is not enough." "What do you want me to do, Alina? Build a time machine?" "No, I want you to care before the damage happens." Darian looked away. That was when I saw it. Just for a second, his phone screen lit up in his hand. A message preview appeared. I did not see the full name. Only the beginning, Cell, and, beneath it, 4 words. "Did you get it?" Darian turned the phone face down so quickly that my heart noticed before my mind did. I looked at him. "Who's Cell?" His expression went blank. "What?" he asked quickly. "Your phone. Someone named Cell texted you." He slipped the phone into his pocket. "Work? What kind of work?" He laughed under his breath. "Here we go again." "No, answer me." "It's a vendor named Cell, Selena. She handles one of our accounts." I watched him carefully. "Why did she ask if you got it?" His face hardened. "You read my messages now." "I saw it flash, so now I can't even get a work text without you investigating me." "That's not what I am doing." "It is exactly what you are doing." Darian stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You are looking for a problem because you want to be angry." I stared at him. And there it was again. The reversal. He missed our daughter's school event. He came home laughing at his phone. He hid a message, and somehow, I was the one creating problems. That is how emotional exhaustion begins. Not from one large betrayal, but from being forced to defend your right to notice what is obvious. I did not continue. Not because I believed him. Because Maya was sleeping upstairs, and I was tired of giving the walls another argument to remember. So I picked up the certificate. I placed it carefully in Maya's school folder. Then I walked past him. Darian called after me. "That's it?" I stopped at the foot of the stairs. "What? You are just going to walk away?" I turned around. For the first time that night, my voice was calm. "You said you were tired." He blinked, caught by his own excuse. "So I am letting you rest." Then I went upstairs. But I did not sleep. I lay awake in the dark beside a man who came to bed at midnight, turned his back to me, and breathed like he had nothing to confess. At 2:13 a.m., his phone buzzed once on the nightstand. I opened my eyes. He did not move. The room was dark except for the pale glow of the screen. I should not have looked. That is what people say when they want to discuss privacy instead of betrayal. But there is a difference between invading peace and investigating pain. And by then, peace had already left our house. The phone screen showed another message. Selena, please don't forget Saturday. He's been asking, not the account, not the vendor. I stared at those words until they blurred. Please don't forget Saturday. He's been asking. I did not touch the phone. I did not wake Darian. I did not scream. I did not demand answers in the dark. I simply lay there with my eyes open, listening to his steady breathing, while something inside me began to rearrange itself. Because a woman argues when she thinks truth can still save the house. But suspicion teaches her to listen differently. And that night, for the first time, I stopped listening to his words and started listening to the spaces between them. Morning came too bright for what I had learned in the dark. There should be a law against sunlight after betrayal. The world should at least have the decency to stay gray when your heart is carrying something heavy. But outside my bedroom window, birds sang shamelessly. Cars moved. Neighbors walked dogs. Children rode bicycles. The world kept moving like nothing had happened. That is one of life's cruelest lessons. Your private heartbreak never stops the public clock. I lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling. Beside me, Darian slept peacefully. One arm stretched across his pillow, mouth slightly open, breathing slow and deep. He slept like innocence. That made me angry. Not loud anger, not sharp anger. The cold kind, the kind that settles deep in your bones and waits. I turned my head and studied him. For years, I had looked at this man through the lens of hope. Hope softens edges. Hope explains away missing pieces. Hope can make a woman call shadows sunlight if she is desperate enough to keep warm. But suspicion is different. Suspicion sharpens everything. Now I saw details. His phone tucked under his pillow instead of on the nightstand. That was new. The faint scent of cologne he only wore on important meetings. The expensive watch I bought him 3 Christmases ago that he never wore for me. But lately wore often. The distance in his touch. The impatience in his answers. The secrecy dressed up as stress. My chest tightened. Then I heard small footsteps. Maya. Her bedroom door opened softly, followed by the gentle shuffle of little feet across hardwood. She appeared in our doorway wearing fuzzy pink slippers and holding her stuffed rabbit by one ear. Her hair was wild from sleep. Her eyes were sad, not crying, just carrying disappointment quietly, that somehow hurt more. She looked at me and whispered, "Is Daddy awake?" I looked at Darian, still asleep. Still peaceful, still unavailable. I pushed myself up carefully. "No, baby, come here." Maya climbed beside me and curled into my side. Her little body was warm. Children lean into you with total trust. That kind of trust is sacred. Adults break it far too casually. Maya traced circles on the blanket with one small finger. "Mommy?" "Yes?" "Did Daddy forget because he doesn't love school things?" I swallowed hard. "No, sweetheart." "Then why?" That simple question sat between us like a stone. Why? Children always ask the cleanest version of painful truths. Not complicated, just honest. Why? I kissed the top of her head. Sometimes grown-ups carry things they don't know how to talk about. Maya was quiet for a moment. Then she asked softly, "Does Daddy carry me?" My heart nearly broke in half. I pulled her closer. "He should." That answer slipped out before I could soften it. Maya tilted her head. "What do you mean?" I forced a smile. "I mean Daddy loves you very much." She nodded, but I could feel uncertainty in her small body. Children hear what adults try not to say. They always do. Behind us, Darian stirred. His voice came rough with sleep. "What's going on?" Maya brightened instantly. Children forgive with terrifying speed. "Daddy!" She jumped off the bed and climbed onto him. He smiled and wrapped his arms around her. "Good morning, Bug." Maya pressed her cheek against his chest. "You missed my reading." There was no accusation in her voice. Only fact, pure fact. That made it sharper than anger ever could. Darian kissed her forehead. I know, baby, Daddy's sorry. Maya looked up. Really sorry, he smiled. Really sorry. Promise. 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 I watched him say it so easily, so smoothly. Promise. The same mouth that whispered promises in daylight while hiding truths in darkness. Maya relaxed. Children believe what they need to believe. Adults too, if we are honest. Then Darian looked at me over Maya's shoulder. A quiet warning sat in his eyes. Without words, as if saying, do not start, not now, not in front of her, I gave him nothing. No anger, no expression, no opening, just stillness. That seemed to unsettle him more than shouting would have. He frowned slightly. Everything okay? I answered calmly. Perfectly fine, he studied me. For years, my feelings had been visible. He knew my anger, knew my tears, knew my frustration. But calmness. That was foreign territory. Downstairs, I made waffles, while Darian played with Maya in the living room. Their laughter drifted into the kitchen. Normally, that sound healed something in me. This morning, it made me ache, because suddenly I wondered, was he capable of loving her fully? Or was she receiving the leftovers of a divided life? That thought made my hands stop moving. I stared at the waffle batter. Please don't forget Saturday, he's been asking. Who was he? A nephew? A client's son? A child? My mind ran in circles. Then another thought arrived, quieter and far more dangerous. What if Maya is not the only child waiting for him? My knees weakened. I grabbed the counter. No, surely not. Not that. Anything but that. But betrayal is strange. Once suspicion enters the room, every memory stands up and introduces itself differently. Late nights, unexplained transfers from our account, labeled consulting, cash withdrawals, secretiveness, business trips that somehow multiplied over the last 3 years, weekend disappearances explained as emergency meetings. The look on his face whenever I asked too many questions, pieces, so many pieces, and suddenly they looked less like coincidence and more like a puzzle I had been refusing to solve. At breakfast, Darian became overly attentive. That was another tell. Guilt makes people generous in suspicious ways. He poured orange juice for Maya, packed her snack bag, complimented my hair, touched my shoulder twice, smiled too much. Charm can be camouflage. Big plans today? Darian asked casually. I spread butter on toast. Laundry, grocery shopping, normal life. He nodded slowly. I may be late tonight. Of course. Work? I asked. Yes. His eyes held mine half a second too long. He was measuring me, watching for reaction. I gave him none. Drive safe, I said. That startled him. Usually late-night announcements led to questions. Concern, frustration, conversation. Today, nothing. He leaned back slightly. That's it? I looked up. What else would there be? He forced a laugh. Nothing. Maya looked between us. Children always feel weather changes. Adults think they hide. When Darian left, he kissed Maya, grabbed his keys, then paused at the door. He looked at me. You are quiet. I met his gaze. I am thinking. About what? I smiled faintly. Everything. He stood there another second, unsettled. Then he left. The front door closed. Silence filled the house. Maya colored quietly at the dining table. I stood by the window watching Darian drive away. Then, I made a decision. Not a loud one. Not dramatic, just clear. Truth does not always arrive by confession. Sometimes it must be uncovered. Sometimes love has to stop being blind long enough to see. I turned to Maya. Sweetheart? She looked up. Yes, Mommy. How would you feel about spending the afternoon with Grandma? Her whole face lit up. Can we bake cookies? I smiled. Yes. And watch cartoons? Yes. And can Bunny come? She asked, lifting her stuffed rabbit. Bunny is invited too, she laughed. Simple joy, pure joy. Watching her smile hardened my resolve. Because whatever truth waited for me, I needed to find it before it shaped her childhood any further. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. Alina, everything okay? My mother had always been the kind of woman who could hear storms hiding inside a hello. I lowered my voice. Mom, can Maya spend a few hours with you today? A pause, then softly. What happened? I looked toward the front door, toward the life I had spent years defending, and for the first time I answered honestly. I think my marriage has been lying to me. My mother went quiet. Then she said words I would later understand were wisdom wrapped in warning. Baby, sometimes the thing breaking your heart has been broken a long time. You are only just now hearing the crack. My mother arrived in 40 minutes, not 45. Not an hour. 40 minutes. That was who she was. Some women do not rush because they panic. They rush because experience has taught them exactly when panic is appropriate. Her name was Celeste Monroe, and she had the kind of quiet strength that made people lower their voices around her without understanding why. She had raised me mostly alone after my father walked out when I was 9. Not because he found another woman, not because he stopped loving us, but because he found another version of himself he loved more: freedom, carelessness, escape. My mother used to say something that irritated me when I was younger. A selfish heart never leaves empty-handed. It takes peace with it on the way out. I understood those words now, in ways I wished I did not. When she stepped through my front door, Maya ran straight into her arms. Grandma! Celeste bent down and hugged her tightly. There is my moonbeam! Maya giggled. Mommy says I can come bake cookies. My mother smiled warmly. Then we'd better get moving before I eat all the chocolate chips myself. Maya gasped dramatically. You better not, for a moment. Joy filled the room. Small joy, temporary joy, the kind life gives you in little handfuls so you can survive bigger pain. My mother looked at me over Maya's shoulder. Her eyes changed instantly. Mother eyes. Sharp eyes. Truth-seeing eyes. She knew. She did not ask in front of Maya. That was another thing wise. Women understand. Children should not have to carry adult storms. After coats, stuffed rabbits, and important discussions about cookie flavors, they left, the front door shut softly behind them. Silence settled over the house. Real silence. Not peaceful silence. Revealing silence. I stood there alone in my kitchen. My heart pounded hard enough for me to feel it in my throat. Then I did something I had avoided for years. I opened our finances. Not the monthly budget spreadsheet I maintained. Not bills, not groceries, not mortgage statements, the hidden corners, the places trust rarely looks. I sat at the dining table with my laptop open. Sunlight moved slowly across the hardwood floor, while numbers began telling me stories Darian never had. At first, it looked harmless. Transfers. Small ones. $200 here. $400 there. $150. Then, larger ones. $800, $1,200, $950. Always labeled consulting, vendor reimbursement, project expense, emergency operations. The labels were vague enough to avoid attention, but the dates caught my eye. Almost every transfer happened near the middle or end of the month, and nearly all of them aligned with Saturdays. Saturday. Please don't forget Saturday, he's been asking. My stomach turned cold. I dug deeper. One account number appeared repeatedly. Same routing path. Same recipient institution. Private transfer. No name attached. Just numbers. But patterns always betray secrets. People lie. Patterns rarely do. Then I found something worse. 3 years ago, Darian had quietly opened a separate savings account. Not secret from the bank. Secret from me. It was linked through his employer direct deposit. A percentage of his bonus income went there automatically. I stared at the balance. $48,000. $48,000. My breathing stopped. I thought about all our conversations. We need to slow spending. We should wait another year before renovating. Private school for Maya is too expensive. Things are tight right now. Tight. There was nearly $50,000 living in shadows while I clipped coupons, postponed dental work, and told Maya we would wait until Christmas for the dollhouse she wanted. A strange laugh escaped me, short, sharp, humorless. Sometimes betrayal becomes so large it almost becomes absurd. You sit there staring at it thinking, surely this cannot be my life. Surely I am misunderstanding. Then truth leans close and whispers, no, you simply trusted the wrong hands. I kept digging. This time I did not find an address. Not yet. That would have been too easy. Instead, I found breadcrumbs. A recurring insurance premium paid from the private account. A policy number I did not recognize. A payment to a children's dental practice 35 minutes away from our home. A charge from a small tutoring center called Bright Steps Learning. A toy store purchase on a Saturday morning. A transaction at a bowling alley called Kingpin Lanes. A receipt from a children's shoe store. Size 1 youth sneakers. My hands froze on the keyboard. Maya wore a size 12. Not 1. I stared at the number 1. Such a small number. Such a loud clue. The house felt suddenly too quiet. My phone rang. I jumped. It was my friend Lena Carter. Lena had known me since college. She was blunt, loyal, and blessed with the kind of instincts that often made polite people uncomfortable, because she noticed what everyone else pretended not to see. I answered. Hey! Lena immediately paused. That voice sounds expensive. What happened? I almost laughed through tears. Only Lena could phrase heartbreak like a bill coming due. I think Darian has another life. Silence. Then, what kind of another life? I don't know yet. Cheating. Maybe worse. Another pause. Then her voice became sharp. Where are you? At home. Stay there. I am coming. Lena. Number, listen carefully. Women make bad decisions when shock is steering the car. Do not confront him. Do not text him. Do not become emotional evidence in your own case. Stay where you are. I wasn't going to. Good. I'll be there soon. She hung up. 23 minutes later, Lena walked in, wearing jeans, sneakers, and the expression of a woman ready to fight God if necessary. She set coffee on the table. Start talking. I showed her everything. The transfers, the hidden savings, the insurance premium, the children's dental office, the tutoring center, the toy store, the size 1 sneakers. Lena sat back slowly. Oh, hell. What? I asked. She looked at me carefully. This does not smell like an affair. What do you mean? This smells like responsibility. My chest tightened. What kind? Lena leaned forward. The kind men hide because exposure cost them the life they built on top of it. I swallowed. You think he has another child? I think we need proof, she said. I covered my mouth. Maya's face flashed in my mind, her little voice. Does Daddy carry me? My eyes filled instantly. Lena reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Listen to me, Alina. I nodded weakly. If he has divided his life, that is his shame, not Maya's burden, and not yours. I whispered the thing that terrified me most. What if he loves that child more? Lena's face softened. A decent father does not split love by child. He expands it. If he is choosing one child over another, that is character failure, not proof of who is more lovable. I broke then. Quiet tears. Heavy tears. The kind that come not from loud pain, but from old exhaustion finally having permission to sit down. Lena let me cry. Then she said softly, You know what hurts selfish people most? I wiped my eyes. What? The moment the person carrying their weight finally puts it down. That stayed with me, because love should never feel like carrying a grown person on your back while they complain about your pace. That evening, Darian came home at 9:11 p.m. He entered quietly. Too quietly, like a man trying not to wake suspicion. I sat in the living room with a book open on my lap. I had not read a single sentence. He looked surprised to see me there. "You are still up?" he asked. "Yes." He loosened his tie. "How was your day?" The question was casual, too casual. I closed the book. "Interesting." His hand paused at his collar. "Interesting how?" I went through some old receipt. His face did not change much, but his eyes did. That small flicker was enough. "Oh, yes. I am trying to clean up our records." "Our records?" "Our household records," I confirmed. He nodded slowly. "Anything I need to know about?" I smiled faintly. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether there is anything I should know about." The room changed. Darian looked at me for a long moment. Then he laughed softly, but it did not reach his eyes. "You've been listening to Lena too much." There it was, deflection. Blame the friend. Make the wife seem influenced. Old trick. Tired trick. I stood. "No, Darian. I've been listening to myself too little." Then I walked upstairs behind me. He said nothing, but his silence was different now. It had fear inside it, and fear, once it enters a liar's body, starts making mistakes. The next day, I became careful. Not suspicious in the obvious way. Careful, there is a difference. Suspicion shakes doorknobs. Carefulness studies hinges. I did not ask Darian where he was going. I did not check his phone. I did not follow him around the house. Instead, I watched patterns. How he turned his screen away. How he stepped outside for certain calls. How his voice softened when he spoke near the garage. How he used the same phrase 3 times in 2 days. "I'll handle it." Handle what? One afternoon, while folding laundry, I found a receipt in the pocket of his gray blazer. Not hidden well, just forgotten. A children's bookstore, 2 purchases. A beginner chapter book about astronauts. A workbook for 3rd grade math. 3rd grade, Maya was in 1st grade. The receipt was from Saturday, the same Saturday Selena had texted about. I held that slip of paper between my fingers while the dryer hummed behind me. Sometimes truth does not kick the door down. Sometimes it leaves paper in a pocket and waits for you to stop pretending. That evening, Darian said he had to run out for an hour. "Emergency client issue," he told me. Maya looked up from her coloring book. "Can you help me with my reading when you come back?" He hesitated. "Just half a second. Enough for me to see the conflict." "Of course, Bug," Darian said. Maya smiled. "Promise?" He kissed her forehead. "Promise?" That word again. It had become so cheap in his mouth it almost made me flinch. He left at 6:18 p.m. At 6:20. 4 p.m., Lena pulled up outside. I had already texted her. "He's leaving. I need to see where." She did not ask questions. Good friends know when to become motion. I told Maya grandma was picking her up for a short visit, and my mother arrived like she had been waiting beside the phone. Then Lena and I followed Darian. At first, he drove toward the office district. 10 minutes. 15, I almost relaxed. Maybe he really had a client emergency. Maybe I had built a mountain out of receipts and fear. Then he turned away from downtown. Lena's hands tightened on the wheel. "There it is," she said. We followed at a careful distance. He parked outside a small shopping plaza. Not romantic, not secretive in the way I expected. There was a pharmacy, a tutoring center, a bakery, a children's consignment store, Bright Steps Learning, the tutoring center from the bank charge. My stomach dropped. Darian got out of the car carrying a navy gift bag. Blue tissue paper, children's wrapping. He walked into the tutoring center. Through the glass window, I saw him speak to the receptionist. Then I saw a small figure run toward him. A boy. I could not see his face clearly, only the speed of him, the joy. The way Darian crouched and opened his arms, the boy crashed into him. Darian hugged him. Long, familiar, fatherly. My breath left me, Lena whispered. Alina, I need to see. Not here. I need to see his face. Alina, wait. But shock had moved my body before wisdom could stop it. I opened the car door. Lena grabbed my wrist. No, I froze. Through the window, Darian suddenly looked toward the parking lot. For one terrible second, I thought he saw me. Lena pulled me down slightly. Stay still, she whispered. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. Darian stepped toward the window, still holding the boy's hand. The boy looked up at him, smiling. I caught only a glimpse, curly dark hair, bright eyes, a dimple. Then Darian turned away. My whole body shook. Lena slowly released my wrist. You almost exposed yourself before knowing enough, I whispered. He hugged him like he knew him. Lena's voice was gentle now. He does know him. I covered my mouth. Inside the tutoring center, Darian handed the boy the gift bag. The boy pulled out the astronaut book and jumped with excitement. Then a woman entered from the side hallway. Selena. I recognized the name before I recognized her face. Tall, warm brown skin, soft cardigan, tired eyes. Not glamorous, not flashy. Not what I expected. She looked like a mother rushing from one responsibility to another. She touched the boy's shoulder. Then, she touched Darian's arm. Not flirtatious. Not secret lover dramatic. Familiar, domestic. That was worse. Then Darian leaned down and whispered something to the boy. The boy nodded. I could not hear the words. But I saw Darian's face. Tender. Open. Present. A version of fatherhood Maya kept waiting for. Lena drove away before I could ask her to stay. I did not fight her, because I could feel myself close to breaking. On the drive home, I stared ahead. Lena spoke quietly. We still need the full truth. I nodded. You have enough to know something is wrong, not enough to know the whole structure. The whole structure, I repeated. Yes. Who knows what? Who owns what? Who is legally tied to whom? What he has promised? What he has hidden? That matters. My accounting mind heard her. My wife heart wanted to scream. My mother heart wanted to protect Maya. All three parts of me were fighting for the steering wheel. When I got home, Darian was already there. That startled me. He stood in the kitchen, reading Maya's book with her at the table. His voice was warm. Patient. Too patient. Maya looked up happily. Mommy, Daddy came back like he said. I smiled. My face did its old job. That's wonderful, baby. Darian looked at me. His eyes searched mine. Everything okay? I took off my coat. Perfectly fine. That night, after Maya went to bed, Darian found me in the laundry room. He leaned against the doorway. You went out earlier. I folded a towel slowly. Yes, where? To breathe? His jaw tightened. With Lena? I looked up. Does that matter? I just asked a question. And I answered one. He stared at me. There was fear in his eyes now. Not guilt alone. Fear. You are changing, Darian said. No. I answered calmly, I am returning. He frowned. To what? To myself. He had no answer. Because men who benefit from your shrinking rarely celebrate your return. That night, I waited until Darian slept. Then I checked the family filing cabinet in his office. Not because I wanted to invade his privacy, because privacy and secrecy are not the same thing. Privacy protects dignity. Secrecy protects deception. At the back of a drawer beneath tax folders, I found a sealed envelope from a law office. No address on the outside. Only his name. I should have waited. I did not. Inside was a draft trust document. 2 minors listed. Maya Elise Brooks. Micah James Carter. Micah, a name. A real name. Not a shadow. Not a possibility. A child. The envelope trembled in my hands. Below his name was another phrase. separate residential property allocation pending, and one address, a townhouse. 35 minutes from our home. I wrote it down. By morning, I had made my decision. Saturday, I would follow him one last time, not to confirm whether he was lying. I already knew that. I needed to see the life he had built with my absence. Because some truths must be seen to be survived. The 2 days before Saturday moved strangely. Time does that when truth is waiting at the door. Hours become heavier. Minutes become louder. Every glance becomes suspicious. Every sentence becomes evidence. Every silence begins to speak. And suddenly, the person you once knew by heart starts feeling like a stranger renting space in your life. Darian came home Friday evening carrying flowers. White lilies, my favorite. He had not brought me flowers in almost a year. Not on birthdays. Not after arguments, not just because. But now, suddenly, flowers. Guilt has a scent. Sometimes it smells like expensive cologne. Sometimes it smells like white lilies. He held them out with an easy smile. For you, I stared at them for a second too long. Then I took them. They're beautiful. He studied my face. You seem distant. I almost smiled at the irony. Distance. He had been building another life in shadows, and somehow I was the one becoming distant. I am tired, I said. His eyes narrowed slightly. That answer belonged to him. I had borrowed one of his old excuses and handed it back wrapped in calmness. He noticed. He always noticed when his own medicine touched his tongue. At dinner, he was attentive. Too attentive, he asked Maya about school, helped clear plates, laughed more than usual, touched my lower back while walking past me in the kitchen. Soft little gestures meant to simulate intimacy, not repair simulation. Counterfeit affection spends easily, until truth checks the signature. Later that night, after Maya was asleep, he found me folding laundry in our bedroom. He leaned against the doorway, watching me. What happened to us? Darian asked. I kept folding Maya's little shirts into neat squares. What do you mean? You used to talk to me. I looked up slowly. I did. No, I mean really talk. A sad laugh almost escaped me. The nerve of neglected people is astonishing when abandonment finally changes direction. I talked, Darian. He frowned. You know what I mean. No, I said quietly. I don't think I do. He stepped closer. You are shutting me out. That sentence hung in the room like smoke. I stared at him. Then, for the first time in years, I answered with naked truth. No, Darian, I spent years trying to get in. There is a difference. His face changed. Something flickered there. Not guilt. Fear. Small, quick, but real. He stepped closer still. Is this about that text? I folded another shirt. Should it be? It was work. Then it was work. He waited for accusation. He waited for interrogation. He waited for old Alina. But I gave him no fight, and that unsettled him far more than anger. Men can prepare for storms. Silence terrifies them, because they cannot measure how deep the water has become. He sat on the edge of the bed. I know I haven't been perfect, I almost said. No one asked for perfect. But I stayed quiet, he continued. I've been carrying a lot. There it was. Truth standing near the door, still wearing a mask. I folded another shirt. What kind of a lot? His eyes lifted toward me. For one dangerous second, I thought he might confess. Instead, work pressure. Cowardice often chooses familiar lies because truth requires courage. I nodded once. Of course. That answer confused him. He searched my face. You believe me. I looked at him calmly. I believe you are carrying something. He swallowed. That landed deeper than accusation, because truth has sharp edges, even when spoken softly. That night, he held me while we slept. Or rather, he held the version of me he thought still existed. His arm rested across my waist. His breath warmed my neck. His body sought comfort from a woman whose heart he had quietly been dividing for years. And lying there in darkness, I understood something painful. Sometimes the person betraying you still loves you in their own broken way. That is what makes leaving complicated. Not all betrayal comes from lack of love. Some comes from selfishness large enough to stand on love's throat. Morning came, Saturday, Truth Day. Darian was dressed by 8:30 a.m. Blue button down, dark jeans, watch polished, shoes cleaned. Cologne. He looked less like a man running errands and more like a man preparing to be seen. I stood at the coffee maker. "Big meeting?" I asked. He glanced at me. "Something like that. What time will you be back?" His answer came too quickly. "Late afternoon." Lie. Clean lie. Practiced lie. He touched my shoulder, then left. My stomach twisted. Earlier that morning, I had already dropped Maya at my mother's house, pretending the day was normal when my hands would not stop shaking. The moment his car disappeared, Lena's SUV pulled into my driveway, right on time. She stepped out wearing sunglasses and determination. "Well," Lena said, "let's go meet your husband." Then Lena and I followed. At first, Darian drove downtown. Office district, normal route. For 10 minutes, I almost convinced myself I was crazy. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe grief and suspicion had poisoned ordinary things. Then he kept driving. Past downtown, past the business district, into a quiet suburban neighborhood, lined with maples and trimmed lawns. Townhouses, clean sidewalks, children's bicycles on porches. Flower boxes, family life. My heartbeat thundered. Darian pulled into the driveway of a cream-colored townhouse with blue shutters. He parked, Saturday, there a moment, then got out carrying a gift bag from the passenger seat. A gift bag, blue tissue paper, children's wrapping. My breathing stopped. The front door opened. A little boy burst out. Maybe 7 years old. Curly, dark hair, long legs, bright smile. He ran straight at Darian yelling, "Dad!" The world went silent. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that happens when reality punches through denial so hard your mind leaves your body for a second. "Dad!" The boy launched himself into Darian's arms. Darian laughed. Real laughter. Full laughter. The kind I had not heard at home in years. He lifted the child high into the air, spun him once, held him close, and then the front door opened wider. Selena stepped out. This time, I saw more than features. I saw weariness, the kind that settles into a woman who has spent years carrying heavy truths alone. Her shoulders looked tired. Her smile looked practiced. Her eyes held that strange mixture of love, shame, and survival I would later recognize in myself. Not glamorous, not predatory, not triumphant, just tired, human, and somehow that made everything hurt worse. Like life had been heavy on her too. Darian walked toward her carrying the boy, and Selena kissed his cheek like routine, like habit, like family. My hand flew to my mouth. Tears filled my eyes instantly. Beside me, Lena whispered softly. Oh God, I could barely breathe, because betrayal was bad enough. But this was not a side affair, not hidden pleasure, not reckless cheating. This was another life. Another child. Another home. Another version of fatherhood. And suddenly, Maya's little voice came back to me like a blade. Does Daddy carry me? I watched Darian carry another child into another home, and in that moment, something inside me did not break. It hardened. There is a difference. Broken things collapse. Hardened things become sharp, and sharp things cut clean when it is finally time to separate what has been tangled in lies. Then Lena grabbed my wrist. Alina, I kept staring. Alina, look at me. I turned slowly. Her face was grave. There is something else. What? She pointed toward the little boy. Look closely. I wiped my tears and stared again. At his face, at his smile, at the shape of his eyes. My stomach dropped. Not because he looked like Darian, because he looked like Maya. the same smile, the same dimple in the left cheek, the same eyes, the same laugh. My voice came out as a whisper. "How old do you think he is?" Lena answered quietly. "About 7. Maya was 6. My whole body went cold. No, 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 no. Then the truth arrived in full. Not another child after our marriage. Not betrayal during hardship. No. He already had another family when he married me. And sometimes the cruelest lies are not the ones people tell you. They are the lies they build while smiling in your face and asking you to call it love." I do not remember the drive home. People think heartbreak always comes with loud crying, shaking hands, and dramatic collapse. Sometimes it does, but sometimes heartbreak is colder than that. Sometimes it is numbness so deep it feels like your soul stepped outside your body because staying inside would hurt too much. That was me in Lena's passenger seat, silent. Still, staring out the window while neighborhoods blurred past like scenery in somebody else's life. Lena kept glancing at me, not speaking. Wise people understand there are moments when words become disrespectful because pain deserves room bigger than language. Finally, she pulled into my mother's driveway. My voice came out flat. "I can't let Maya see me like this." Lena put the car in park, then breathed for 60 seconds. I stared ahead. "What if I can't?" "You can," her voice softened. "You've been carrying a man who built 2 lives on one back. You can survive one truth." That sentence landed heavily. Because it was true. For years, I had been carrying invisible weight I could never quite explain. Now I knew why my spirit had always been tired. I had been living in a marriage crowded by ghosts I was never introduced to. I sat there for another minute. Then I fixed my face. Not because I was healed, because motherhood does not always allow collapse on schedule. When I walked inside, Maya ran to me holding a flour-covered wooden spoon. "Mommy, Grandma let me crack eggs all by myself." I smiled, a real smile somehow, because children can still pull sunlight out of dark places. "That's impressive." My mother looked at me once. That was all it took. She knew the truth was worse than suspicion. Later, after Maya was distracted by cartoons and cookies, my mother and Lena sat with me in the kitchen. 3 women, 3 generations of scars, 3 different kinds of strength. I told them everything. The townhouse, the boy, the word dad, Selena, the age, the realization. By the time I finished, silence filled the room. Then my mother stood up slowly, not in shock, in anger, controlled anger, the dangerous kind. She walked to the sink and stared out the window for a long moment before speaking. "When did he meet you?" my mother asked. 9 years ago. "When did you marry?" 8 years ago. Maya is 6. "Yes." My mother's jaw tightened. "That means while he was pursuing you, promising you forever, standing in church vows, and building a marriage with you. He was still maintaining another home life he never disclosed." I nodded weakly. Saying it aloud made it uglier. Truth becomes heavier when spoken where air can touch it. Lena leaned forward. "Question." I looked up. "Do we know if Selena knows about you?" I blinked. The thought had barely crossed my mind. I don't know, because if she doesn't, then Darian built one lie with 2 innocent women living inside it. My mother added quietly, "and 2 children paying the price." That hit hard, because suddenly I saw not one child hurt by him. 2, Maya, and that little boy. Children born into a web they did not spin. My voice cracked. "What kind of man does that?" My mother answered softly. "A weak one. Not evil, not monster weak." There was something sobering in that. Weakness creates devastation far beyond what strength ever would. Weak men chase comfort, hide truth, delay accountability, and in protecting themselves, they wound everyone standing near them. My mother sat beside me. She took my hand like she had when I was little. "Listen carefully," I nodded. You are standing at a dangerous crossroads. What do you mean? You can become consumed by rage. Her voice remained calm. Or you can become wise. I stared at her. She continued. Rage burns hot and fast. It feels powerful, but it often burns the person holding it. Wisdom is slower, colder, cleaner. Wisdom protects what matters and lets truth destroy what deserves to fall. Lena nodded. She's right, I whispered. I want him to hurt. My mother squeezed my hand. That is honest. Tears filled my eyes. I want him to feel what he did, and he will. Her eyes held mine, but not because you scream, not because you beg, not because you become chaos. She leaned closer. Selfish people suffer most when they lose access to what quietly held their life together. That sentence settled deep inside me. Quietly held their life together. That had been me, the appointments, the home, the meals, the emotional balance. The child's stability, the softness, the forgiveness, the covering, the waiting, the believing. I had been the unseen foundation beneath a man who thought he built everything himself, and suddenly I understood he was not standing tall. He was standing on me, and the moment I stepped away, gravity would introduce itself. That night, Darian came home around 6 carrying balloons, pink and silver, a giant stuffed unicorn, and a toy telescope. My stomach turned. Maya squealed with joy. Daddy! He swept her up into his arms. For my favorite girl. Favorite? The word landed like poison. Favorite compared to whom? Compared to the boy he had just lifted in another driveway. Or was favorite simply a convenient costume he wore house to house? I watched him kneel beside Maya, helping her open the telescope box. His laughter filled the room. His smile looked genuine. That somehow made everything worse, because monsters are easier to leave, but broken men who are loving in pieces. They confuse your pain, make you question your judgment, keep you trapped between truth and memory. At dinner, Darian was unusually relaxed, almost glowing, as though spending the afternoon elsewhere had fed some hunger I had never known existed. He reached for my hand across the table. I pulled back slightly to reach for water. The movement was subtle, but he noticed. His eyes sharpened. Later, after Maya slept, he found me in the backyard sitting alone beneath the porch light. Spring air moved softly through the trees. Crickets hummed. The neighborhood looked peaceful. Funny how beautiful nights can hold ugly truths. Darian sat beside me. You've been strange. I stared ahead. Maybe I am tired. He laughed softly. My line again? I said nothing. He studied my face. Then quietly, are you unhappy? That question nearly made me laugh. Not because it was funny, because some people stab you and then ask why you are bleeding. I turned toward him slowly. Are you? He blinked. What? Unhappy. He looked away. That was answer enough. Then he said something I will never forget. I thought what we had would be enough. My whole body went cold. What we had. Enough. Not everything enough, as though he were speaking like a man rationing himself between households. My voice was quiet. Enough for what? He rubbed his hands together. For life. That strange answer hung there. Half confession, half lie. The kind selfish people offer when truth is scratching at the walls. I looked at him. Really looked. At the man I married, at the stranger wearing his face. And for the first time, I realized something painful. I had spent years fighting for honesty from a man who had never once brought his whole self home. Not once. Only pieces. Only portions. Only leftovers of truth. And there is an old lesson life keeps teaching in different clothes. You cannot build a full future with someone only giving you fractions. That night, while Darian slept, I made 3 decisions. First, I would gather proof. Second, I would find out whether Selena knew. Third, I would leave in a way that protected Maya's heart and secured her future. Not loudly, not recklessly, cleanly. Because revenge shouted becomes noise, but justice served cold becomes memory. And memory has a way of haunting selfish people long after doors quietly close. The next morning, while Darian showered, his phone buzzed on the dresser. A name appeared clearly this time. Selena, and beneath it, he keeps asking when he can finally see his sister. My breath caught. His sister. My mind raced. Then horror arrived. The children knew of each other, but had never met, which meant Darian had been weaving stories in both homes, maintaining two worlds, managing two truths, playing father on overlapping stages. I stared at those words until one chilling thought formed. If the children knew, then Selena likely knew about Maya. But did she know about me, or had he built another lie there too? I looked toward the bathroom door. Water still running, steam filling the room. Then I looked back at the message, and for the first time in my life, I did something that would change everything. I picked up Selena's number and wrote it down. I stood there holding that number like it was fire. One phone number, 10 digits. Such a small thing to carry so much destruction. My hands trembled. Not because I was afraid of what I might hear, because somewhere deep inside me, I already knew. Women know more than they admit to themselves. We feel cracks before walls fall. We sense absence before names are spoken. We recognize borrowed affection before proof arrives. The heart often knows long before the mind gathers courage to listen. I quickly saved Selena's number on a scrap piece of paper from Maya's drawing pad, folded it twice, and tucked it into the pocket of my robe, just as the bathroom water shut off. Darian walked out moments later wrapped in a towel, steam trailing behind him. He smiled. That same easy smile. That same familiar face. That same stranger. You are up early, Darian said. I couldn't sleep. He dried his hair with another towel. Everything okay? I looked at him, straight into his eyes. For years, I had looked at him searching for reassurance. Now I looked at him searching for truth. There is a difference. Truth does not blush under your gaze, lies do. His eyes shifted first, just slightly. Enough, I answered calmly. I am fine, he nodded, relieved too quickly. Then he dressed for church. Church, that irony almost broke me. Some people wear faith like perfume, something they spray on before stepping into public. Clean on the outside, rotting beneath the collar. By noon, Darian had taken Maya for ice cream. That was unusual, almost strategic. A fatherly gesture placed like flowers on a grave no one had acknowledged yet. The moment they left, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at Selena's number. Then I called 1 ring. 2, 3. Voicemail. I hung up. Cowardice. No, not cowardice. Timing. You only get one first conversation with truth. You do not waste it shaking. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number, I answered quietly. Hello, a woman's voice spoke carefully. Hi, I missed a call from this number. Selena. I closed my eyes briefly. This was it. The doorway. The cliff edge. One sentence would determine what came next. I chose honesty. My name is Alina Brooks. Silence, long silence. Then softly, I know who you are. My entire body went cold. Not shock. Confirmation. You know who I am? I asked. Yes. Her voice trembled slightly. I've known for years. My throat tightened. Then you know I am his wife. Another long pause. Then, yes. My fingers curled around the phone. Anger surged hot in my chest. You knew. Selena's voice sharpened with panic. Before you start treating me like some cheap woman hiding in the dark, you need to know I did not come after your husband. The words hit like a slap. I stood from the table. My husband was leaving my house to go play father in yours, and you want to correct my tone? Selena exhaled shakily. No, I want you to understand that I was lied to too. You knew I existed, and you didn't know I existed at all, she said. That silenced me, not because she was right in a way that excused her, because pain had more than one address. I gripped the back of a chair. What explanation exists for this? Then I heard something unexpected, crying. Quiet, crying. Not manipulative. Not theatrical. Exhausted crying. The kind people do when carrying shame too long. When Selena spoke again, her voice was broken. I am not the other woman. I laughed bitterly. Then what exactly are you? Her answer shattered everything. I thought I understood. I was in his life before you. Silence swallowed the room. I gripped the edge of the table. What? We were together before you. My breathing became shallow. I leaned forward, my voice tightening. He met me 9 years ago, Selena nodded slowly. Yes, that's when he started building 2 lives. My breathing became shallow. And he married me 8 years ago. Selena's voice trembled. Yes, he told me he had ended things with you emotionally. I closed my eyes. Lie layered on lie. To Selena, I was the woman he called responsibility. To me, she did not exist. 2 women, 2 truths. 1 cowardly man, Selena continued. He said, you were pregnant and unstable. He said he couldn't abandon you, but that your marriage was more about responsibility than love. My voice turned cold. Were you his wife? Selena shook her head quickly. No, never. She wiped at her eyes and steadied herself. I was never his wife, Alina. I was the woman he kept promising to return to. Then I became the secret he kept feeding hope to. My chest tightened. And while he was promising you tomorrow, he married me? Selena nodded slowly. Yes. Her voice broke. He married you legally. He kept me emotionally trapped. Every time I tried to walk away, he promised he was fixing things. I kept believing next month would be different. Then, next month became years. There it was. Clean truth. 1 legal wife, 1 hidden family built on promises, fear, and cowardice. Not 2 marriages. 1 marriage, 2 homes, and a man too weak to live, honestly, in either one. A sound left me that did not feel human, pregnant and unstable. So he had not only hidden her from me, he had rewritten me for her, I asked quietly. And you believed him? At first, yes, at first. Selena's voice hardened now. Do you want honesty or comfort, Alina? I want truth. Then yes, at first, I believed him. Then later, I suspected he was lying. Then I knew he was lying. And by then, my son loved him. My life was tied to his money, and I was ashamed enough to keep waiting for the truth he kept promising. I hated her in that moment, and I understood her. Both things were true. That is what betrayal does. It creates emotions that cannot sit neatly in one chair. What is his name, Micah? How old is Micah? 7. Conceived before vows. Before rings, before promises spoken to me in church. My whole marriage tilted sideways. Not because it was broken, because I suddenly realized it had never stood straight, Selena said softly. I know you hate me. I don't know what I feel, I said quietly. That's fair. No, I said. Fair would have been you calling me years ago, her breath caught. You are right. That stopped me. Defensive people can be argued with. People who admit the truth become harder to attack, Selena whispered. I was weak. I said nothing, she continued. And weakness can still hurt people. I know that. I won't pretend I was innocent in everything. My anger shifted slightly, not gone. Just redirected, because there was only one architect of this ruin. Darian, I asked. Does Micah know Maya is his sister? Yes. Does Maya know him? No. He asks about her, Selena whispered. He sees her pictures in Darian's wallet. Pictures, plural. My chest tightened. There were moments. Darian had stared at Maya's photos with tears in his eyes. I thought that was fatherly love. Maybe it was guilt. maybe grief, maybe conflict, maybe all three. Selena spoke softly. Alina, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but please don't punish the children for what he did. That surprised me. Not save me, not forgive me, protect the children. That was a mother speaking. Not a rival, not an enemy, a mother. I asked quietly, if I asked you to meet me woman to woman, would you? Yes. Immediately. No. Hesitation. Yes, how soon today? There is a cafe on Maple Street called Willow and Oak, 4 o'clock. I'll be there. Before hanging up, Selena whispered something that lodged deep in my soul. For what it's worth, he speaks about you like you are the best thing that ever happened to him. A bitter tear slipped down my cheek. Funny how selfish people often recognize gold while still digging in dirt. At 3:42 p.m., I walked into Willow and Oak with my heart steady and my mind sharper than it had been in years. Not calm. Calm suggests comfort. This was clarity, cold clarity. The kind that comes when illusion finally dies and truth is the only thing left standing in the room. The cafe was warm and softly lit. Brick walls, low jazz music, the smell of roasted coffee and cinnamon, couples talking quietly, students typing on laptops, a little girl near the window coloring with crayons, while her father read paperwork beside her. Ordinary life happening everywhere, and there is something strange about betrayal. It makes ordinary things feel sacred because you suddenly understand how precious honesty really is. Selena was already there. She sat in the far corner near the window, hands wrapped around a coffee cup she clearly had not touched. She stood when she saw me. For a second, we simply stared at each other. Two women whose lives had been stitched together by lies neither of us created. Up close, she looked exhausted. That was the first thing I noticed. Not threatening, not triumphant. Exhausted. The kind of tired that settles behind the eyes after carrying heartbreak too long. I sat down. Neither of us knew where to begin. Finally, Selena spoke. I am sorry. My jaw tightened. For what exactly? For my part in this. I looked at her carefully. You knew. Yes. You stayed. Tears filled her eyes immediately. Yes. Why? Her answer came without decoration. Because I loved him. Because Micah loved him. Because every time I tried to leave, he promised truth was coming. And because part of me was ashamed to admit I had given my life to a man who kept splitting himself into pieces. I looked away. You do understand that your shame became my blindness. Selena flinched. Yes. And your silence helped him lie to me. Yes. And mine probably helped him lie to you. She looked at me then. Her eyes filled. Yes, that was the first moment we stopped being two women on opposite sides of a table. Not friends. Not yet. But witnesses. I leaned back. Tell me everything. And she did for nearly an hour. The full ugly story. She met Darian 11 years ago. They were serious quickly. She became pregnant unexpectedly. At first, Darian was attentive, excited, committed. Then fear entered him. Career, ambitions, financial worries, pressure, responsibility. And instead of becoming stronger, he became divided. He told Selena he needed space to think. During that space, he met me. He pursued me fully, promised me exclusivity, promised forever. Meanwhile, he kept telling Selena they were simply complicated, not over. When Selena discovered he had proposed to me, he told her marrying me would help him build a stronger, more stable life financially, one that would allow him to provide better for Micah in the long run. He promised Selena that once he was secure, he would finally make everything right. He was using my stability to justify his dishonesty, using one woman as a foundation while feeding another woman hope. That is not love. That is selfishness dressed up as strategy. My stomach turned. Stability. I was not a wife in his story. I was infrastructure, a foundation built on lies. And yet, he loved me. That was the twisted thing. Selena described him crying over me, speaking lovingly about me, talking proudly about Maya, showing photos, calling me brilliant, patient, and kind. He had genuine love for both homes. But genuine love without genuine truth becomes poison. Because divided honesty is simply deception dressed warmly. I asked Selena, did he ever plan to choose? Her laugh was hollow. No, men who fear consequences rarely choose. They wait for circumstances to choose for them. That sentence felt like scripture. Then she showed me something that changed everything. A folder, receipts, medical records, school papers, birthday photos, and one folded letter. She pushed it toward me. He wrote this 3 years ago, never sent it to you. I found it in his jacket and kept it because I thought someday truth would need witnesses. I opened it. Darian's handwriting, messy but unmistakable. I read, I keep living in rooms built by my own lies. Every day I promise myself I'll tell the truth. Every day I look at what honesty will destroy and become smaller instead of braver. I am loved by people who deserve better than the man I keep choosing to be. I stopped reading. My eyes filled instantly, because that was the cruelest part. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was not blind, not confused, not trapped. He was choosing cowardice repeatedly, with full awareness of the damage. That is a different kind of betrayal, the intentional kind. I asked, does Micah know how complicated this is? Selena shook her head. No, he only knows Daddy lives somewhere else with his little sister. My throat tightened, his little sister. There it was again. Recognition, connection, children seeing family. Where adults built walls, I whispered. Maya deserves to know truth someday. But gently. Selena nodded. And Micah, too. For the first time, we were not rivals across a table. We were mothers, protectors, women cleaning up wreckage. Then Selena leaned forward. There is something else, my stomach sank. What now? He's about to do something big. What? He told me last week he was finally fixing everything. Cold fear moved through me. What does that mean? He mentioned changing insurance policies, beneficiary paperwork, property titles, college funds. He kept saying once he organized everything, he'd have the conversation. I froze. He was restructuring assets, preparing disclosure, or preparing control. My accountant's mind clicked on instantly. Paperwork, beneficiaries, titles, funds. Not emotional moves. Financial architecture. And financial architecture leaves footprints. I looked at Selena. Has he ever asked you for documents? Her face changed. Yes. What kind? Micah's birth certificate, social security records, some insurance forms. My pulse quickened. When? Last month. My mind raced. Then horror formed. He wasn't preparing honesty. He was preparing legal positioning. Positioning for what? Protection? Estate planning? Concealment? Division? Or something worse? I stood suddenly, Selena startled. What is it? I answered slowly. I need to know exactly what he's doing with money, property, and beneficiary records. My accounting instincts were awake now. Patterns, paper trails, structures, intent hidden in documentation. That is where truth often lives when mouths lie. Selena grabbed my hand before I left. Alina, I looked down. For what it's worth, I think he truly loves you. A sad smile touched my mouth. That may be true. Then I said the lesson many women eventually learn, but love without integrity is just hunger wearing a wedding ring. Selena's eyes filled. She whispered, That's exactly what he is. I walked out of Willow and Oak into the evening air feeling transformed. Not healed, transformed. There is a difference. Healing softens, transformation sharpens, and sharp women become dangerous to deceit because they stop asking lies to explain themselves. They simply gather truth and act. That night, When Darian came home smiling and carrying takeout from my favorite restaurant, he found me at the dining table. Laptop open, folders stacked neatly. Notebook ready, calculator beside me. The old me would have cried. The old me would have screamed. The old me would have demanded confession. But pain had educated me, and education makes quiet women terrifying. He stopped in the doorway, his smile faded. "What's all this?" Darian asked. I looked up calmly, then said 5 words that drained color from his face. "We need to discuss paperwork." For the first time since I met Darian, I watched confidence leave his body. Not dramatically, it slipped away quietly, the way water drains from a cracked glass. His shoulders tightened, his jaw shifted, his grip on the takeout bag loosened slightly. There is something about paperwork that terrifies dishonest people. Words can be twisted, tears can be manipulated, arguments can be redirected, but documents sit quietly and refuse to lie. He set the food on the kitchen counter. "What paperwork?" I closed the laptop gently. Not hard, not theatrical, controlled. The kind with numbers. He gave a small, uneasy laugh. "You are being cryptic." I folded my hands. "No, Darian, for the first time in years, I am being clear." He stood still, watching me, measuring me, trying to understand what version of his wife sat in front of him. Then he pulled out a chair and sat down slowly. "What's going on?" I held his gaze. "Our finances don't make sense." That landed. Not because of what I said, because of how quickly fear moved across his eyes before he covered it. He leaned back. "What do you mean?" "I mean hidden transfers." His expression hardened slightly. "Business. I mean a private savings account worth nearly $50,000. Silence. "I mean a trust draft with Maya and Micah listed." His face went pale. There it was, not confusion, recognition, he whispered. "Where did you get that?" I smiled sadly. "That's your first question," Darian swallowed. "Alina, you don't understand." Stage 1, the classic opening. You don't understand. As though betrayal becomes smaller when wrapped in complexity, I leaned back. "Then help me understand." He rubbed both hands over his face. "It's complicated." Stage 2, complicated. Another word people use when simple truth would make them accountable. I opened the folder and placed copies of the transfers on the table. Money is not complicated. Then I placed the tutor receipt down. Children's expenses are not complicated. Then I placed the address down. Property is not complicated. Then I looked directly at him. Lies are complicated. His eyes filled. "Please don't do this like an audit." That almost made me laugh. "You turned my marriage into hidden accounts and unnamed obligations. What exactly did you expect me to do?" He looked away. "I was trying to protect everyone." Stage 3. Protection. That old coward's cloak. I lowered my voice. "No, you were protecting yourself." He shook his head. "No, Alina, I was trying to keep the children stable. By lying to their mothers? I didn't know how to fix it. You knew how to fund it." That landed like a slap. His mouth opened, then closed. I continued. "You knew how to schedule Saturdays." His eyes lowered. "You knew how to hide transfers." He swallowed. "You knew how to buy gifts." His tears gathered. "You knew how to make one child wait while another child asked." His face crumpled. I leaned forward. "So do not sit here and tell me you did not know how. You knew how to manage the lie. You simply did not know how to become honest." Silence long, heavy, the kind that waits for a soul to decide whether it will keep hiding. Finally, Darian whispered, "I never wanted this." My voice remained steady. "But you built it." He closed his eyes. Yes, stage 4, collapse. That one word carried years of buried truth. No denial, no twisting, no escape, just yes. My heart cracked again, but this time around certainty. "Not confusion?" I asked. How long? His voice dropped. 11 years. Longer than me, before me. During me, through me, I nodded slowly. And you married me anyway. His shoulders sagged. I loved you. The answer came fast, too earnest. I believed he believed it. That was the tragedy. Selfish people often mistake wanting someone deeply for loving them rightly, I asked. And Selena, he whispered, I loved her too. There it was, the full sickness. Not lack of love, lack of integrity, a heart large enough to feel love, but too weak to choose honesty. Tears slipped down his face. I kept trying to fix it. I laughed once, sharp broken. You mean hide it better? No, his voice cracked. I kept thinking there would be a right time to tell the truth. There is never a right time for betrayal. He looked down. I know. No, I said quietly. You understood. Knowing and changing are different things. That sentence hit him hard, because wisdom does what anger often cannot. It names the wound precisely. Then I asked the question that mattered most. Did you ever plan to leave me? His head snapped up. No. Did you ever plan to leave Selena? Pain moved across his face. No. I nodded. Once, truth, ugly truth, honest truth. He wanted both worlds forever. Not because he needed them, because he wanted them. There is an old saying my mother used to whisper, a greedy hand eventually drops everything, because it refuses to hold one blessing with gratitude. Darian had spent years clutching too much. Now everything was slipping. He leaned forward desperately. I love Maya. I know, and I love you. I looked at him carefully, then answered with brutal softness. You love being loved by me. He froze, that landed like truth always lands. Heavy, he whispered. That's not fair. It's exactly fair. My voice remained calm. Love protects. Love tells truth. Love chooses courage over comfort. What you did was feed from two homes while calling yourself hungry. His tears came harder. He covered his face. I hate myself. That should have satisfied me years ago. It would have. But strangely, it did not. Because pain matures, revenge screams for suffering, wisdom asks for accountability, and accountability is colder, cleaner, and far more lasting. I asked, what were you changing financially? He looked confused by the sudden shift. What? The paperwork, beneficiaries, policies, property. He wiped his eyes. I was creating equal college funds for both children. That softened me slightly. At least that. He nodded weakly. I was also putting both homes into trust structures. Both homes, the words still stung. Why now? His face changed. Then he said quietly, because my doctor found something. Cold fear hit me. What? He swallowed hard. A mass in my lung. Silence. The room went still. He continued. They don't know if it's cancer yet. More testing next week. I stared at him, and suddenly, puzzle pieces slammed together. The paperwork, the urgency, the emotional shifts, the extra attention, the gifts, the flowers, the attempts at closeness. He was preparing because mortality had knocked on his door. Death makes cowards suddenly interested in truth, not always because they become brave, sometimes because they become afraid of leaving unfinished messes, I whispered. So that's what woke your conscience. His eyes filled again. Yes, that answer made me furious in a different way, not because he was sick, because it took fear for himself. Not love for us to finally move him toward honesty. That is a painful measure of character. I stood up slowly, steadily. He stood too, panicked. Please don't leave, Darian said. I looked at him with tears in my eyes. Darian, I left a long time ago. My body just hadn't caught up yet. He broke then, fully broke, collapsed into the chair, sobbing. not polished tears. Ugly grief. The sound of a man finally crushed beneath the weight he made, others carry for years. And even then, I pitied him. Because love does not disappear neatly. It lingers like smoke long after fire destroys the house. But pity is not permission to stay. I spoke softly. You will always be Maya's father. He looked up desperately. And Micah's. He nodded. You will provide equally for both children. Yes, you will tell the truth fully. Yes, you will never make those children feel divided. He cried harder. I promise. I almost smiled sadly, promises. He had spent a lifetime cheapening that word. So I answered, do not promise, perform. Then I said the words that changed everything. Tomorrow, Selena is coming here. We tell the truth woman to woman, parent to parent, and we build a healthier future for those children without lies. His face drained completely. He whispered, you know, Selena, I know everything. And there is a quiet justice in watching a man who controlled the story realize he no longer owns the narrative. Because truth is like fire once released, it answers to no one. The next morning, the house felt like it was holding its breath. Some homes remember. They remember laughter. They remember arguments. They remember secrets whispered behind closed doors. And sometimes they remember the exact moment truth finally walked in and refused to leave. That Sunday morning, my house remembered everything. I woke before sunrise. Not because I slept well. I barely slept at all. But something inside me had changed. For years, I woke each day carrying emotional weight I could not name. Now, I knew its name. Deception. And strangely, naming pain makes it lighter to carry. Not lighter because it hurts less. Lighter because confusion is heavier than truth. I stood in the kitchen making coffee while dawn slowly filled the windows. The house was quiet. Maya still slept upstairs. Darian sat at the dining table exactly where I had left him hours earlier. Same chair, same clothes, same hollow look in his eyes. He looked smaller somehow. Truth shrinks false strength. The image of power often depends on what others do not know. Once exposed, illusion collapses under its own emptiness. I poured coffee into 2 mugs, set one in front of him. He looked surprised. You made me coffee, Darian asked. I sat across from him. You are still Maya's father. His eyes filled instantly. Not because of coffee, because grace wounds selfish people more deeply than hatred sometimes can. Hatred lets them become victims in their own minds. Grace forces them to face what they destroyed. He wrapped shaking hands around the mug. I don't deserve your kindness. No, I said. Honestly, you don't. His face fell. Then I added, but Maya deserves parents who can behave like adults. That steadied the room, not reconciliation. Order, there is a difference. Around 10 o'clock, my mother, Celeste, arrived to take Maya out for the afternoon. She walked in carrying bright energy. Who wants pancakes and a movie? Celeste asked. Maya came racing downstairs. Me. My mother hugged her tightly, then bent low and whispered loudly enough for all of us to hear, and maybe shopping for that dollhouse you wanted. Maya gasped, her whole face lit like sunrise. Really? Really? She flew into my arms first. Mommy, Grandma's the best. I kissed her forehead. She really is. Then Maya turned to Darian. He knelt and hugged her longer than usual, too long holding on, his eyes shut tightly. He whispered against her hair, I love you bigger than the sky. Maya smiled. I love you bigger than space. Children say things that sound simple but carry galaxies. He kissed her forehead again. When she left, silence filled the doorway she had just run through. Then Darian broke quietly, not sobbing, just tears falling unchecked. I almost lost all of that, Darian said. I looked at him. No, you were losing it slowly for years. You just finally noticed. That truth sat heavy between us. At noon, Selena arrived with Micah. When I opened the door, my breath caught. Not because of Selena, because of Micah. Standing beside his mother, holding her hand, was a little boy with Darian's eyes and Maya's smile. He looked up at me politely. Hi, his voice was sweet. Open. Innocent. Completely unaware, he stood in the doorway of generations of adult damage. I crouched slightly. Hi, Micah. He smiled shyly. My mom said we're having grown-up talks. I smiled softly. We are. He lifted a toy spaceship in his hand. Can I still play? Of course. Yes, baby. You sure can. His whole face brightened. Children are beautifully resilient before adults teach them pain. Inside, Darian stood frozen when he saw Micah. The boy ran to him instantly. Dad! Darian dropped to one knee and hugged him hard, then harder. His shoulders shook. Micah pulled back. Daddy, why are you crying? Darian wiped his face quickly. Sometimes grown men cry when they're grateful. Micah nodded thoughtfully. That's okay. My mom cries too. The innocence of that nearly crushed me. Children normalize the wounds adults keep causing. Selena and I exchanged a long look. No rivalry now, only shared understanding. Then my mother's wisdom returned to me. 2 innocent women, 2 innocent children, 1 weak man. We sat in the living room. Darian finally told the full truth. No excuses, no polishing, no victimhood, just confession. How fear made him lie, how cowardice kept him lying, how love became possession instead of honesty, how he kept promising himself truth tomorrow while destroying lives today. When he finished, silence settled. Then Selena spoke first. Her voice was steady. You stole years from me. Darian lowered his head. Yes. I spoke next. You stole trust from me. He nodded, tears falling. Yes. Then Micah looked up from the floor where he was playing with toy blocks. His little voice cut through everything. Did Daddy do something bad? The room froze. No one moved. No one breathed. Children always arrive at truth by the shortest road. I stood, walked over, and knelt beside him. I touched his shoulder gently. Daddy made mistakes. Micah looked worried. Big mistakes! I nodded softly. Yes. He thought for a moment, then asked, can mistakes be fixed? And there it was, the moral center of the entire story spoken by a child. Can mistakes be fixed? I looked at Darian, at Selena, at the wreckage, then at this innocent boy who deserved better. My answer came slowly. Some mistakes leave scars forever, but honest hearts can still build something better from what's broken. Micah nodded like that, made perfect sense. Children understand rebuilding better than adults do. Adults cling to what was. Children simply learn what can be. Then came the moment none of us expected. Micah asked. When do I meet my sister? Silence. Then Darian cried openly. Selena covered her mouth. And I smiled through tears. Because children were reaching for connection while adults had spent years building walls. I whispered. Soon. Very soon, that afternoon, Maya came home. She walked in carrying shopping bags and excitement. Then she stopped, saw Micah. Tilted her head. Children study faces instinctively. Then she smiled. You look kind of like me. Micah grinned. My mom says I have a sister. Maya looked at me. I nodded gently. Yes, sweetheart. She looked back at him. Then, in the simple, miraculous way children sometimes heal what adults destroy, she asked, Do you want to see my telescope? Micah's eyes lit up. Yes, and just like that, they ran upstairs laughing. No baggage, no bitterness, no shame. Only wonder. Watching them disappear up the stairs, I understood something profound. Children inherit truth better than lies. Truth may wound briefly. Lies wound for generations. That evening, after everyone left, Darian stood in the doorway with a suitcase. He looked at me, broken, humbled, human. I never deserved you, he said. I answered softly. That was never the issue. He waited, I finished. You simply never valued truth enough to keep what deserved protecting. He cried quietly. Then left, no shouting, no dramatic slam of doors, just footsteps fading down the porch and the quiet closing of a chapter that had exhausted my soul. Weeks later, I sat on the porch watching Maya and Micah play in the yard, brother and sister, laughing, arguing, building forts, becoming family in honesty. Selena sat beside me, not as enemy, not even as friend, exactly, something deeper, a fellow survivor. Women tied not by betrayal anymore, but by rebuilding, Selena asked quietly. Do you miss him? I watched the children. Then answered honestly. I miss who I believe he was. That is a different grief. Then I added, but peace feels better than pretending. And that was my lesson. A woman argues when she cares. She explains when she believes. She repeats herself when she is trying to save what is breaking. But when she grows quiet, listen carefully, because silence is not always peace. Sometimes it is wisdom packing its bags. Sometimes it is self-respect standing up. Sometimes it is love, finally refusing to bleed alone. And sometimes, quiet is simply the sound of a woman choosing herself before there is nothing left of her to choose. A year can change everything, and nothing. That is the strange mathematics of heartbreak. Some wounds heal beautifully. Some wounds scar quietly. Some wounds never fully close, but you learn how to live without bleeding on everything you touch. 1 year later, my life no longer looked like the life I thought I wanted. It looked better. Not easier, not cleaner, but truer, and truth, even when it arrives dressed like grief, eventually becomes freedom's most honest doorway. I moved. Not far, just far enough. A bright 2-story home 15 minutes away, tucked inside a quiet neighborhood, lined with dogwoods and maple trees. It had a wraparound porch Maya loved, and a backyard big enough for 2 children to run until sunset painted their faces gold. Inside, there was laughter again. Real laughter, not careful laughter, not forced peace, not the fragile kind that shatters when tension walks into the room. Honest laughter, the kind that rises naturally when nobody is lying. Maya was 7 now. Micah was 8, and watching them together still amazed me. They fought over toys, argued about cartoons, built blanket forts in the living room, teamed up against bedtime, defended each other at school like tiny lawyers. Love had found them faster than truth. Wounded them. Children are miraculous that way. Adults study pain. Children study possibility. Selena and I became something neither of us expected. Family. Not traditional family. Of course. Not easy family, but chosen family built from shared fire. We spent holidays together, rotated school pickups, shared dinners, laughed at things that once would have made us cry. Sometimes, life grows gardens exactly where betrayal buried bones, and sometimes women, once freed from competing for crumbs, realize they were always worthy of the whole loaf. Darian kept his promises, not with words, with action. He established equal trust funds, transferred both homes properly, created education accounts for both children, set legal guardianship documents, entered counseling, and for the first time in his life, he began living one truth instead of juggling many lies. But consequence still came. His diagnosis returned 2 months after he moved out. Stage 2 lung cancer. Treatable, but serious. When he told me, he cried, not because he feared dying, because for the first time, he understood what it meant to truly lose time. There is an old cruelty in life. The selfish waste years casually until they suddenly understand years are expensive. Then, regret becomes their loudest companion. One evening, months later, I visited him. Not as wife, not as lover, as the mother of his child, as someone who once loved him deeply enough to mourn what he chose not to be. His apartment was small, simple, quiet, no divided households, no hidden doors, no parallel lives, just one man and the full echo of his choices. He looked thinner, older, more honest, somehow. Pain strips performance from people. He made tea. We sat on a balcony overlooking a small park where autumn leaves covered the ground like gold paper. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then Darian said quietly, "I think about what I destroyed every day." I looked ahead. "You built destruction slowly. You are only seeing it clearly now." He nodded. "That's fair." Then softly, "I loved you." I smiled sadly. "I know. I really did." I turned toward him. "Darian, love was never your problem." He looked confused. "What was?" I answered gently. "Character." That landed hard, because it was true. Love without character becomes selfish appetite. Love with character becomes sacrifice, honesty, and protection. He stared into his cup. I keep asking myself why I did it. "Do you know?" His answer came after a long silence. "Yes." "What?" He swallowed. "I wanted to be admired by everyone and accountable to no one." There it was, the root. Not romance, not confusion, vanity, cowardice, appetite. He continued. "I wanted every version of happiness and thought I was clever enough to hold them all." I nodded slowly. And his eyes filled. All I held was ruin. Truth finally spoken cleanly. Sometimes the punishment is not losing what you love. Sometimes the punishment is finally understanding you were the reason it was lost. He looked at me. "Do you forgive me?" I thought carefully, then answered honestly. "I released hatred." He waited. "That is not the same as restoring trust." He nodded. "I understand." And strangely, he did. That was growth. Late, painfully late, but real. Before I left, he stopped me at the door. "Alina," I turned. He smiled sadly. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me." I answered softly. "No." He frowned. "I finished. The best thing that happened to you was being loved by people better than you deserve. The tragedy is you learned their value only after hurting them." Tears filled his eyes. Not because I was cruel, because truth spoken without anger cuts deeper than rage ever could. A few weeks later, Maya asked me a question while we sat on the porch watching Micah chase fireflies. "Mommy?" "Yes, baby?" "Are broken families bad?" Children ask enormous questions in tiny voices. I pulled her close. "No, sweetheart. What are they?" I kissed her forehead. "Families are like trees. Some grow straight. Some bend in storms. Some split into branches. Nobody expected. What matters is whether love keeps growing." She thought hard about that. Then smiled. "We're growing." I smiled too. Yes, we were, and so was I, because rebuilding taught me what survival never could. You can love deeply and still walk away. You can forgive and still protect yourself. You can be wounded and still become wonderful. You can lose the life you planned and find the life you were meant for. And when women finally understand their worth, something beautiful happens. They stop begging empty cups to pour. They stop standing in burning rooms calling smoke normal. They stop shrinking themselves to fit inside someone else's selfishness. They become whole, quietly, powerfully, completely. And that quiet wholeness is louder than any revenge. Some women do not rise because life was kind. They rise because betrayal taught them how to build wings from broken things. And once a woman learns she can fly, she never again mistakes a cage for home. That is not revenge. That is resurrection. And resurrection is the quiet kind of victory no lie can survive. If this story reminded you that silence does not always mean weakness, stay with me. Some women do not become stronger because they wanted to. They become stronger because life leaves them no softer way to survive. The next story is about one of those women. Click the next story on your screen because some endings do not explode all at once. They leave quietly and return a completely different woman.
thank you for spending this time with Cora Stories Live. Wherever you listened from tonight, whether near or far, in the morning light, in the quiet afternoon, or deep into the stillness of night, I'm grateful you were here. Your support means more than words can say. Until the next story, rest well, stay strong, and keep believing in second chances. Good night.